Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast, is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our podcast network, head to patreon.com/laststandmedia.
Let's get ready to rumble, ladies and gents. Welcome back to Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational brawl. We've got a title bout for you today featuring the talents of Mean Gene Park, Rowdy Matty Piper, Colin the Giant, and Dag the Snake Moriarty, or Hacksaw Jim Dagan. Whatever you, I couldn't decide. I couldn't decide which one.
The Million Dagan Man.
I am your host, Dagan Dagster, or Hacksaw Jim Dagan Moriarty. Let's go around and say hi, shall we? Can you, actually, it's probably good to start with the guy who signs the checks around here. Kyle, what's going on, my dude?
Oh, nothing. Good to be here with you guys. It's a fun combination of people today.
Oh, yeah.
Matty and Gene and Dag.
I like it.
I'm well. It's Friday, as we always record on Friday. I'm ready for the weekend to arrive. I've just been busy playing games and been playing Atomfall. I know you've been playing that too, Matty. Maybe we'll do a conversation about that in the coming weeks.
The game's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. Like, I don't know how I feel about it. All I know is that I'm very intrigued by it, and I'm like 10 hours in.
Oh, I was going to
say, short game,
I vacillate
so
between.
You're close to done.
I think I've figured out a way out, basically.
Yeah.
But it's a really cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for people that don't know, Atomfall takes place in like the early 60s after the Windscale event, which is a real thing in UK in the early 60s, where a nuclear power plant went on fire. And it takes place 5 years after that happens. And it's like a whole alternate history about it. And you're basically in like the zone around, like the exclusion zone around the power plant. And like you have to try to get out.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
But the game doesn't tell you anything. It's one of those, and this is where I don't really like it, because I'm playing a video game. I want to play a video game where it's like no quest log, no, HUD, no. It's interesting. So like, I really like it in premise. I don't know how I feel about it as a video game, but so I've been busy, but that's me. Like, I like guided things a little bit more.
Sure. I think there's this difficulty setting. You can just make it guided if you ever wanted to.
Oh yeah. I did the suggested one, which was like the hardcore, or not. There's 5 modes.
The normal. Yeah.
It's like, and whatever they suggested to you, which I think they call survival.
Yeah.
In the game, but so I've just been busy with that, and busy just watching hockey. Playoff chase is on. Islanders just can't get it together. Matty, did you see that Columbus Islanders game where we got robbed of that extra point?
You know what? Yes, I did. Yes. Yeah. With Palmieri, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, that's going to cost us the playoff spot. I'm going to lose it. So yeah, I've been paying attention to that. And otherwise it's good to be here. It's beautiful out today. It's going to be it's already 70. It's going to be in the high 70s today. So after this, I'll go for a nice walk.
Yeah. Spring is in the air, huh?
Spring has sprung. Someone else has sprung too. Yeah. So thank you for having me today.
Good to see you, my friend. Matty, we'll stay with you, man. How you doing? I haven't seen you in a few weeks, at least.
I know. I was thinking about when Gene was on Defining Duke for, I think, our Avowed review, and Gene said it was a bad week to be a Gene Park hater because he was on every show. Well, Gene and I have comboed up multiple times this week now, so it is a very bad week to be both a Matty and a Gene Park hater. But it's good to be here, Dag. Your shirt immediately caught my interest the moment you joined. Is this a sweater? Is this pajama top? What are we rocking?
No,
here?
Yeah, it's really hard to tell. It is kind of pajama top adjacent, but
it's the collar that gives it the pajama look. That's what kind of threw me off.
It's a sweatshirt, but it could double as a pajama.
I love it. Yeah,
as PJs.
Anytime I'm at like the thrift store and I see Disney anything, I jump for it. So yeah, I actually got this shirt from the thrift store. I couldn't believe it. I'm a little Mega Man t-shirt. Yeah, couldn't believe it.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not even really like a big classic Mega Man guy, but I was like, I feel like I just found gold. I got to take this with me. So
yeah, it's dope.
Yeah. I love it.
What kind of jerk puts a Mega Man shirt into Goodwill?
I know.
Or Thrift Salvation Army?
That's crazy.
I have a problem with that.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
You just keep it. Even if you're not going to wear it, you just keep it. You have to
hand it down
like an
to the next
American
generation, that sort of thing. I was very, one man's trash, another man's treasure. So,
That's a good find.
Yeah.
it's a great find. It's like when Dagan has I don't know if you probably still don't have it, but Dagan had an awesome Sony shirt in the 90s that he found at Goodwill.
Yeah.
And I was always so jealous of it because that was when there was just not cool branding for video games. It must have been in like the mid or late 90s you had that shirt. I was like, that shirt is so cool.
Yeah. That's
I bought because I like vintage clothes. I saw there was a old promotional. It's funny because they're actually back. Acclaim jersey. They used to they used to publish all of like the MLB All-Star games or something like that, the All-Star baseball games. And I guess for one of the promotions for their games, they had a jersey that someone had up on eBay, and so I was just like, So I picked it up. It was I gave it a try because I've never seen. I like did the reverse image search and everything. I was like, there's nothing like this. I've never seen this before. So it's like this old video game promotional material. And usually when you find that it's like Zelda and it's like $400, I'm like, hell out of here. But this was like a very fair, reasonable price for. I was like, I'll take a shot at this, see how it goes.
Yeah, and it's real Acclaim. It's not fake Acclaim, which is what it is. I mean, this new Acclaim is not going to last. There's just no way. Yeah, in my opinion, like
very
they don't
ambitious.
own anything.
Yeah.
They don't own anything. I remember we made we made fun of the press release on Sacred because I was like, the press release literally speaks out of both sides of its mouth. Where it's like, we want to revive old, Acclaim properties, and then it's like, we don't know if the Acclaim properties will be available to us because when they went bankrupt, they sold all of it.
That's so lame.
So it's like, well, what are you even doing? Like,
that breaks my heart.
I mean, obviously, what's the most iconic Acclaim game? NBA Jam. Like, there's no way they're getting that back, right? No way. They're not getting any of it back. So I hate when. Didn't they learn any lessons from Embracer Group and THQ and how that went?
Nope. And others.
Yeah, it's so strange. Like, make a new property.
They had
a claim.
They did. I don't know if they still use it. I'm guessing they don't. But didn't they have like their sort of proxy of like a Nike swoosh as part of their logo? It was like a little more.
It's more
graphic
like
and harder edge than that.
Yeah,
more like a greater than symbol, like a bunch of times over.
It's like it's supposed to be the C's, right? Or is it K's? Or they're C's, ACC, right? So because they don't stylize it. Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like the stylized C's in the logo. I think like greater than, less than, exactly.
Right, exactly, right. Yeah, that's a shame. I feel that way about a lot of companies. Like look at Neo Geo or SNK, right? It's like I know they still have a lot of their catalog, but it feels like it's like that company in name only because it's. The era has spanned so far now that it's like it's a shadow of its former self.
Atari is really, I think, in this pocket where I'm friendly with Jason Polanski. He's a friend of mine. He's on our show sometimes. He's the executive producer at Atari.
Yeah,
and we've talked in the past because Lilimo has been not asked, but we've been given the opportunity to pitch them on games.
Yeah.
And they have a whole catalog of things that they own, but they actually have a catalog of things that they have sold over time that they don't own anymore. And so like there are some of the biggest stuff that Atari ever did is not theirs anymore. That's why you see them going towards like Missile Command and and Jason is really on point with, a lot of the stuff they're trying to do to revive these things. Ninja Typing was the game that I wanted to pitch them on.
Yeah, I remember that.
And, but yeah, so it's interesting. Like Atari's kind of in that halfway space. This is like the fourth iteration of Atari or something like that. But over time, they've shed some of the stuff I don't think they own Adventure or any of that stuff.
So they fire sailed that stuff one by one in order to kind of stay afloat. I'm assuming
it's very similar to what Marvel did in the late 90s, early 2000s with like these 99-year or like permanent leases.
They were almost gone.
And it's just so crazy. Like that's why everyone's like, Sony's never letting Spider-Man go. You kidding? It's crazy that they made those deals. And I think those deals were for like nothing, like in the several millions of dollars or something.
They declared bankruptcy a few times, Marvel, in the 90s. Yeah. So, that's interesting.
Maybe they can declare bankruptcy again.
Mean Gene.
I'm sorry. They've declared, they've declared creative bankruptcy. That's for sure.
Yes.
Anyway, back to Gene.
Everybody has. Gene, good to see you, my friend. How you doing today?
Yeah, I like the wrestling reference. Good old Mean Gene Okerlund. Rest in peace. I've been called Mean Gene all my life. Ever since I was a kid.
But you're not mean.
My teachers called it mean. It's because of Mean Gene Okerlund. That's how pervasive his voice and his face was. That's how huge wrestling was back in the day. And we can get into the topics later, but That just goes to show like what a big influence that guy was. That like people of all walks of life like knew that reference. And then when I always introduce myself as Gene, that was just their first point of contact.
We got to get you that iconic mustache.
Oh, so iconic.
Gene was Okerlund was like he was awesome.
He was the best.
Yeah. A broadcast journalist person. It's really interesting to see how diverse the broadcast journalism background can be in various entertainment forms, but yeah, he was just a disc jockey, a radio jockey, an old school content creator, from back in the day.
I didn't even know that. I only knew him from WWF. And I remember the disparity in scale because he's always interviewing these hulking dudes and he's like this little guy barely in frame. You know what I mean? Like I always just see that like holding the arm up.
Yeah,
he's
a little
wrestler.
squirrely guy, bald guy with a mustache,
So
but he had the loudest. He had a voice to match everyone else in that room.
Dude, isn't there that video with him and Macho Man where he's talking about the cream rising to the top or whatever, and he has like one of the little cream, like Macho Man has like one of the little creamers you get at like a restaurant and puts it in his pocket of his jacket, like just like dead ass. Dude, like they're so funny and they just keep the flat affect.
Yeah,
the whole time. Which we'll get into later because that's what.
Yes, we will.
It's so funny to think about Gene Okerlund.
Yeah. But yeah, that's been a reference all my life. That and Gene Park in the back. Always some kind of parking pun, or whether I'm related to so and so Park, George Washington Park or something, down the street.
Darth Maul, Ray Park.
Yeah. Oh, Ray Park. That's another. Well, Gene, I think, have you surpassed Gene Okerlund and every other Gene in terms of important genes? I can't think of another more important Gene than Gene Park.
There's got to be a Gene out there. Let me think.
Gene Simmons, of course, and then
Gene Simmons.
Gene Simmons.
Yeah,
Come on, of course, that's so disappointing for me.
The late great Gene Hackman as well, too.
Gene Hackman.
Well, you're probably bigger than Gene Hackman.
Maybe at this point. Deserves got nothing to do with it. I love him in Unforgiven, though. That's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh, that's a great film.
Dude, that whole thing about how he died is crazy.
Yeah,
I kind of like caught wind of it. It sounds so depressing. I don't want to learn more about it.
Yeah, it's like really, that's really what happened.
The wife died at the same time, right?
Well, no, it's like the wife was taking care of him, I think.
Right.
Like he was like infirm in some way, and then she died, and then he just died after a few days because no one was there to take care of him.
Because no one was caring.
That's how I understand it, right?
You might be right.
That's what I heard. Yeah, and that just sounds so sad.
And it's
no
like
foul play.
Right, like because everyone was like, "What happened here? Like this is so weird." Like Gene Hackman. Right? Like why would anyone go after Gene Hackman? Why would Gene Hackman kill himself? Why would Gene Hackman kill his wife? I mean, I guess there's crazier things, but no, I guess that's what they think happened. Is like he was just totally. I don't know if he had like dementia or something.
Yeah.
He's old. Yeah,
he was all in his
90s,
mid 90s, right?
Wow,
I love.
I'll be out of my fucking mind if I make it to my 90s. You kidding me?
There's no way.
I doubt it.
To my mid 60s.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll be in like a Matrix pod or something like that, playing GTA. But
you know what's weird about him though? I love him.
Yeah.
Mississippi Burning, French Connection, and Tenenbaums specifically. I love everything he's ever done. But the narrative about him, as soon as he passed away, how difficult of a man he was all of a sudden unleashed onto the internet. It was like, I don't know whether that's good or bad that they kind of politely waited for him to pass away before they were like, he was the most impossible dude to work with.
Well,
but that narrative was so fucked. It's like, can we just celebrate the man for like a week?
Yeah. Everyone's like, by the way, Gene Hackman's a fucking prick. I think that there is something about that, not saying that, a little bit more respect, like, because think about the way people have treated, and I think rightfully so if the stories are true, like Chevy Chase.
Yes.
Right? Like Chevy Chase is still alive and everyone hates him and has hated him for decades. Right? So maybe it's a sign that Gene Hackman wasn't that crazy. And that difficult.
Right.
And who knows, maybe the Chevy Chase stuff's overblown too, but I don't think so. Just because it comes from so many I didn't even know it. It was when I lived with Scott Bromley. People might remember that name. He was IGN's very first community manager, and he works for Disney now, and he has for a really long time. But he was the one that explained all this stuff to me.
Okay.
Because he's like a really big comedy fan and stuff. And I was like, yeah, like he was a dickhead. It's in this book and this documentary and all this. And he quit SNL after 1 year or 2 years because he thought he was going to be like wildly famous. And
see, I had never known that.
Yeah.
Before I think Dan Harmon is the one who kind of kicked, because Community, he was so difficult supposedly on Community, and Dan Harmon is so vocal and so involved in like the pop culture zeitgeist that Dan Harmon was very vocal about it. And then that encouraged other actors and crew on the show Community to be vocal about it. And then that just kind of, but you know what? I've watched things with Chevy Chase, and he kind of seems like, I don't know, he seems like kind of a shell of his former self. Like maybe he's losing it a little bit.
He's old
in terms of faculties, but he does seem to kind of cop to it at the same time. Like, I know I'm a pain in the ass. Like him and Bill Murray, right? Like they were notorious, like rivals.
Right. Yeah.
That
was Caddyshack is famously, they agreed to do one scene together. We talked about that.
Yes.
And that's the scene where he's like hitting the flowers with the golf club, which is a great scene.
I love that movie so much.
So
Me too. It's like one of my very favorite movies.
Yeah.
I quoted on, my name's Wang. His name is Wang. No offense. The Dagan and I always say that to each other. And also the Ted Knight, I never slice. Yeah. And he just fucking slices the ball. Like the next shot's him just fucking destroying the ball into the woods. It's so fun. That movie is so perfect. But if you watch it through that lens, you can tell a bunch of things about it, including that they don't like each other.
Yeah.
And that the movie was supposed to be about something else.
Yeah.
And then halfway there, like when they were filming it, they're like, oh, it's got to be about Rodney Dangerfield. Like, what are we doing? You know?
And there's no way they could have known that movie could have been that influential. Like it was kind of like a happy accident that it was that good. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I remember it's one of the rare movies I think I showed you when I was younger.
I had never really watched it.
Because we were obsessed in the 90s with like, Dagan and I loved comedies in the 90s with Bottle Rocket, Mallrats, like shit like that.
Yeah.
And then in high school, I discovered Caddyshack because a kid in my class used to do that thing. And that was like where it came from. And I discovered it. And I'm like, dude, you have to see Caddyshack. Like this movie is fucking hysterical. And the reality is like, it actually almost gets funnier every time I see it because it's so wacky and like Rodney Dangerfield is a fucking treasure. And that's his best performance. Like no doubt about it. You know, he's just like the asshole real estate guy when he's in give me one of these and two of these. And oh, that hat though. He's like, this hat. It looks good on you though.
What's Rodney's second best? Back to School? Would you give it?
Yeah, Back to School, the triple indie. He was really good in. I like the movie Ladybugs actually a lot, but that's a little bit more of a kids movie, but not really because it's like it's a movie for Rodney Dangerfield fans' kids. So he's in it, you know. But it's not, and that's a pretty interesting film through the modern lens because it's about a boy who pretends he's a girl to play.
Oh, that's
soccer
right.
With a bunch of girls and like dominates.
Prescient.
Yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, Rodney Dangerfield is, and Dagan and I have gone on and on. If you want to see great Rodney Dangerfield shit, look up his stuff on Carson because he'll come out of the curtain and do his little thing, but then he'll do like a basically another routine with Carson. And Dagan and I have always talked about how Johnny Carson was the great. He was like the consummate. I'm going to keep the joke going. I get what time it is. It's not about me. So he'd always, be like, Johnny, I tell you about my wife, and Johnny would be like, yo, what about your wife, Rodney? Like that kind of thing, as opposed to like stepping all over the joke, like a lot of these modern guys would do.
At that.
It's awesome.
That's what made him great.
Funny. Yeah. And he's always fixing himself. Like he's always like got his tie. He's always just moving. Long Island's own.
Long Island's very own. RD, my friends, RD. Well, listen, we foreshadowed a topic. We foreshadowed the topic. So I'm going to go ahead and just start with Matty's topic. We're going to roll right into it. And now you guys will know what we're talking about. Not that you already see the titles of the podcast of the show. But anyway, Matty, I'm going to let you kick things off.
I forgot that's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I picked wrestling as a topic because it ebbs and flows, in my life, especially as of recently. But, I grew up like the early 2000s. So, a lot of the wrestlers like you guys are like COG, sometimes reference or a little bit before my time. But I just wanted to talk a bit about if you guys are into pro wrestling, which sounds like most of us were at some point, but what it meant to you at the time, what led to you not watching it? Do you check in on it now? The reason it was top of mind for me is because I used to watch AEW. I talked with Ramon about it a lot when we were at the San Diego event because he's like super passionate about wrestling.
Yeah, he loves
And
wrestling.
and he was just like, it's an art form. Like he was really getting into it. And I had fallen off the AEW product. You know, I watched it since it like first started becoming a thing, and I loved it. And it just was like on this crazy skyrocketing rise, and then in my opinion, has really tremendously fallen off. Like the live shows are like half the audience it used to be. It's like I think a big part of wrestling is the crowd, and when the crowd is like TNA level shit now, it's like just it's sad to watch. I feel bad for these wrestlers who had like full stadiums at one point, and the product has become so hurt that it's barely that. Like there's got to be a part of them on the inside that's like, this is ridiculous. It's mostly, I think, a show that gets consumed like via streaming platforms, and that's really it. But I've fallen out of it for a while. I still keep an eye on it through like YouTube clips, but I kind of do the same for WWE. WWE, it's funny, when AEW was rising, WWE felt like it was just stagnating a lot. It was like, yeah, cool, some competition. But I think the best thing that AEW did was kind of wake up WWE, because they just keep doing really interesting things that I'm not sitting down for the weekly program, but they recently had John Cena turn heel, which like I thought was crazy. You know, like this guy's been the face to a point of getting hated for it for like 20 plus years. He's always the hero. And so he kicks Cody Rhodes in the balls like at the end of, I think it was Royal Rumble or something like that, or Elimination Chamber. Whole crowd is cheering because they're like, oh my God, he did it. Like he actually did a heel turn. And he's just really committed to it. He's being like a piece of shit to the audience. Like he's like made his whole angle about him versus, you know, the WWE universe, if you will. But it's like, I just realized I go into waves with wrestling. Like I'm really into it right now. Like I'm not watching the program, but I'm just checking out like, oh, it's a John Cena clip. Let's tune into that, see what's happening here. And when that's over, like I'm out, you know? So overall, I like wrestling a lot. I have a lot of fond memories with it. Like I've even gone to like amateur shows in my local area. I remember there was like a point for like the briefest period of time I was like, do I want to do this for a living? Like this would be cool.
Wow.
But I just respect so much what they put their bodies through. It's ridiculous. Like not just training, but the bumps they take, and
amazing athletes.
Yeah, really they are. And performers, you know, that ability to captivate with a good match and tell a story through the match is like really difficult. Like you can see the levels more now than ever. And it's so hard to break through. You know, I'll be on like Instagram and I'll see dudes like jumping through like 4 sheets of glass and like cutting themselves wide open for like $50 and a hot dog. And I'm just like, you know, I can imagine WWE scouts looking at that and be like, fuck it. Like we're not going to hire them. And they're just like putting their bodies through so much to even get a crack at some attention. And so it's just such a tremendously hard industry to break through, where anyone who gets involved, it's like very commendable. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of pass it around the horn. Whoever wants to go first, or just any wrestling memories, any wrestling thoughts. Do you watch it nowadays? Dag, we'll start with you.
Yeah.
Where are you at with wrestling, sir?
I have to say, Matty, that's so interesting about John Cena turning him into a bad guy.
Yeah.
But I have to give, and I'm not, I'll get into it a little bit, but I was never a huge wrestling guy, but the whole act of turning somebody heel is the most ingenious thing in entertainment. Because as soon as you feel like something's losing its luster, that's all you have to do. Then you just reinvented the whole thing and just kicked up the excitement, you know, top notch to 100% again, just by flipping the script.
Right. That's what happened with Hogan, right? Like
yeah.
every
Every
in
wrestler.
the 90s.
That's the thing with Cena is like, yeah, every wrestler eventually does it because it shakes up their whole character, right? But
yeah,
Cena was like
brilliant.
Always defiant in that. He was always like, I got to be the hero. Whether, I don't know if it was like him or Vince or whoever, but he was always the hero character in every story, right? And like, you know, he won like 17 championships. It's like, this guy is not putting anyone over. And so now for him to actually be in the final year of his career, like, all right, I'm going heel, is fucking insane. You know?
I fucking love that.
Yeah.
I actually love the hyperbole of wrestling. I'm actually surprised that I wasn't more into it as a kid, because it really speaks to a lot of things that appeal to me. Just, you know, just like in terms of like just a live action cartoon and a mix of, you know, like Matty said, the athleticism and performance. But I have to say, like, way before the John Cenas of the world, I'm old, right? And way before the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnsons of the world, there was Hulk Hogan era WWF, with that colorful cast of characters from Hulk all the way down. And I want to say, I remember, because I was in 6th grade. So the very beginning of junior high for me had to be 85. And that was sort of the height of WWF power. It was the intro, but it was also kind of the pinnacle in retrospect. And it seemed like, I'll give you like a good 75% of boys my age were super invested in it. Like magazines, gear, shirts, backpacks, lunch boxes, who's got tickets to WrestleMania every year. Like that was the ultimate thing. And you know what's funny about it? As I got a little older, it seemed like 99% of those kids were also the video game kids. So it was weird that I was like that weird 1% that was super invested in video games, but wasn't really all about wrestling. Although I enjoyed it when it first came out because I was pretty young and I was still kind of coming out of that. I probably just missed it age-wise because I was just coming out of that toy cartoon kid phase. But I do remember really loving the Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling cartoon that I think was on CBS at the time, Saturday mornings. I think Deke is the production studio that did that. But that's how big it was. It was like cartoon series, the live action things on the TV, the clothes, the toys. It was a huge pop culture thing in the mid 80s. I remember probably being completely out of it by the time 1990 rolled around. But just thinking about the evolution from like 85 to 90, where, who came along in that time? Like The Undertaker. Who is the other dude that became really, really popular? Randy, Macho Man, eventually came on the scene. But who is the other guy? Not The Undertaker, but he kind of dressed like an Aztec, like Mayan.
Ultimate Warrior.
Ultimate Warrior.
Oh,
Right,
Cog's
right.
That was
favorite.
like the next wave.
Cog's favorite. Yeah.
Super. You know what it reminded me of? Like for 70s kids like me, we had Kiss. And Kiss was like the ultimate. Speaking about Gene Simmons, we had the makeup and the pageantry and the fun and the music of all that thing. Like that was it seemed like wrestling, that Hulk Hogan era of wrestling was like the 80s version of what you had in the 70s with Kiss. It was just like every boy was into it, even a little bit. You had to have some. I remember even having the gear. Like I wasn't a little Hulkamaniac, but I had some of the shirts. You know what I mean? Like everybody was a little bit in, at least. But I mean, I remember kids that were like super invested. That's all they talked about at the lunch table. They were the kids. They were also the kids reenacting the wrestling matches on the playground, which I was not tough enough for. Like I knew that was WWF was probably my introduction to like, I'm not one of those kids that could fuck around on the playground. Like I'm way too delicate for that type of thing. And yeah, man, it was like a super huge thing. But that was always the thing about feeling like, well, everybody else that's into video games is super into wrestling for some reason. I wonder why, including my best friend. He was super into wrestling. My friend PJ, who was slightly younger. So he was like he was like 3 or 4 years younger than me. So he was right in that perfect wheelhouse. Like the target was right because he was born in 78, maybe. He was born in the late 70s. So he was like he was the WWF initial wrestling craze generation, I think. And then it was always a thing from being a little kid too. Like there was that era. Now we know it's fake. Now we know it's staged and scripted and a lot of the things, but not to take away from the athleticism and the dedication and all that of the dudes and the women. But there was that era where that was the argument on the playground. It was like, is this real? Is this fake? As little kids, like we really didn't know. We were debating it realistically. Like, some kids were like super doubling down on, no, this is super real. And then the other kids would be like, it's bullshit. Like there was a 5-year period where the jury was out, which was kind of exciting as kids. I mean, we were idiot kids. We didn't know, and back then our parents weren't like spoon feeding us the information and we didn't have the internet. So there was like legitimate debate whether wrestling was real, which I think was probably the most fun era. That 5-year clip from 85 to 90, where it was new. It was new. I know it wasn't new, but it was new to the masses. especially outside those city areas where it was filtering out to the suburbs, which is kind of really neat.
You brought up something interesting because you mentioned like the video game players overlap, and it reminded me because you also briefly mentioned action figures, and that was such a huge part of it for me growing up as well. However, it also reminds me of a great YouTube channel I want to just throw your guys' way. I don't think I don't watch it a lot, but it is just so impressive. It's called WSC Stage Creator, and this guy takes action figures from like wrestlers and makes. And I mean, this guy is like huge, like hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of views. And he has like his own set of belts and matches and stories he tells. Like I'm looking at videos right now, like Prime Bathtub Battle Royale, Multiversal Championship match. And he fills his bathtub with Prime, and like whoever gets thrown in the tub is out of the match. Like he just creates these stories, but he actually like choreographs like the face-offs between these action figures. Like he typically keeps his hands out of it. So the way he shoots the videos, like it looks like they're actually doing these moves, and it's really impressive.
What? I gotta see. So he's not clicking figures together, but he's not doing stop motion. It's somewhere in between.
It's like you see, it's like clips, but he'll like change the camera angle. So like when they're finishing, say like a suplex or something, it looks smooth.
Dude, I love this.
And he keeps his hands out of it, so it really is like a thing you can watch, and it's not just a guy playing with action figures. It's I think it's the most crazy thing. When I found it, I was like, this is unbelievable. And he, like I said, I think what's cool is he'll make like prediction videos. Like he did Royal Rumble predictions with his action figures. So like he took everyone who's going to be in the Royal Rumble this year. He put them in a ring, and he's like, here's how I think things are going to go. And like that one, you do see his hands in it. But yeah, I think it's just really cool what he does, because it keeps that spirit alive of like, when I saw it, I was like, yeah, man, I remember like when I was a kid, like getting the steel cage ring, like that was such a big deal, because you just have this like slew of action figures, and you just think of all these matches that you could put on together. And he does something that I did as a kid. Like I see it in the thumbnail, so it reminds me, but he's got Red Hulk and Shrek in this match with like Solo Sikoa and Logan Paul's here. Like, so he'll so I would bring other action figures into, like, I'd have Batman face Rey Mysterio and whatnot. Like, I just have so much fun with that. So yeah, I just wanted to shout that channel out, WSC Stage Creator, if anyone hasn't checked it out yet. But he does dream matchups too. He just brings in other toy lines. Yeah, he'll do like crossovers between AEW and WWE. Like it's he'll do throwback matches. He's got 559K subscribers. Like it's incredible. It's a really cool channel. But yeah, it just you bringing up the games and stuff, that was also a huge part of it for me. It was like, like I fell out of it after 2008, I would say. Like I was just growing up watching like a lot of SmackDown, sometimes some Raw. And then I was out for a while. And then one year I was just like, oh, I just want to play a WWE video game. And I picked up 2K13. Or I think it was just called WWE 13 at the time. I think it was before they had 2K to the name. I picked it up, and my friends and I, we used to, over like winter breaks, like we'd all do like a sleepover tour, we called it. Like there was like 5 of us, and we just like stay at each other's houses one night a week. So we'd just be together for a whole week. And we just played WWE 13 the whole time. And it was like this, holy shit, this is amazing. This is so much fun. And after that, I was just out of wrestling until AEW, which was like 2019, So it's just always kind of ebbed and flowed out of my life. I just go through these waves. I dive in. For me, UFC is really taken me away from WWE, because I feel like you get all the shit talking, the promos, these guys actually like take it into the octagon and beat the fuck out of each other. So yeah, it's just I still just enjoy watching it though. But yeah, what you said, Dag, about the figures and the toys and the games just reminded me of that era as well.
I never knew the games, like I was already completely out of wrestling, like not even paying a bit of attention by college, which was for me the N64 era. And I never realized until going back to visit the N64 catalog how huge wrestling games had become during that video game generation, especially working on the N64 guidebook with Pat Contry. It was like, wow, there are dozens of wrestling games for this thing. So that's an interesting era, because it seemed like something was really popular, but I had no notion of its popularity.
Yeah.
But you could see it in other media, like the games.
And they have legacy. No Mercy is like a really celebrated N64 wrestling game. But what's really interesting is when AEW announced their video game Fight Forever, which by the way I think is a piece of shit. I think it's so bad, but a lot of people were hyped for it at first because they're like, oh man, this is like No Mercy. And I'm like, these people remember like a 20-year-old wrestling game. And it's like, it built hype for this product. Like, so yeah, they're a huge part of the promotion. Really bigger than even I realized until that moment. I was like, wow, like an old game is driving hype for this new one.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Anyway, we can go around the horn, Colin, if you want to jump in on how you feel about wrestling.
Yeah, I had a few notes, and you guys touched on some of them, so I can get into kind of what I really want to talk about quickly. But the whole "is it real" thing is always what I think about too. But I think that because I was born in '84, and I think you're seeing it through a child's lens. But like today, everyone knows it's fake. Like everyone knows, adults know, kids pretty much I think know. But I felt like it was a little more mysterious back then if it was real or not. Like I feel like it was obvious to many people, but it wasn't necessarily obvious. And what I mean by that is obviously they don't have real beef with each other and they're not really trying to kill each other. But like, is it a real wrestling match in some way? Like, I think people didn't really understand or pardon the pun, grapple with that yet. And so I think that like when we look back on that, you have to kind of throw that little bit of a caveat in there that it was somewhat obvious it wasn't real, but I felt like it was more of an open question with more people, whether like what was real about it and what wasn't. In other words, it didn't seem totally staged to some people. But again, that could be through a child's lens. Now it's very obvious to me. So I thought that was an interesting thing. Like there was more of a mystique around it. Like it was more mysterious because there wasn't the internet. You had your trade publications and shit probably. Like I wasn't into any of that stuff. So
and you know what, Kyle, there was also like, especially thinking about being a sixth grader, because you're at that kind of formative age where you're right on the line. There was definitely a notion of the people that were really hardcore into it, just wanting it to be real. So kind of maintaining that stance, even though they kind of knew, when they give the punch, the forearm punch, and they're stomping on the canvas at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, they are suplexing a guy through a table.
Right. Exactly.
Now, is that table pre-broken a little bit and stuff like that? Probably. But you're still smashing a chair over somebody.
They're like stuntmen.
Yes. That's very well said. And I wouldn't have thought to say it that way.
There's a great level of athleticism to it, I think, which is cool. Like it's a cool thing. But yeah, so just wanted to, because I know you guys, and Dag especially was talking about like with the realness of it. And I'm like, yeah, it's that whole conversation was a little different back then, as I remember it. The Venn diagram thing too, of like people who are into it, I think is a really important thing to touch back on. It seems to be the center point of like sports. There are sports fans, real sports fans that are really into wrestling, but don't play video games. There are video game people that don't like sports, but love wrestling. And it's the nexus point between those two places. And maybe you step a little further into one world or the other from there. So that's always been interesting to me too. Like I remember in high school, there were nerdy kids that were into wrestling and would wear like whatever, who the big wrestler was in the 90s. I don't remember. And like, what was Hogan's group called? They were big, and NCW or something like that.
When he left. Yeah.
Or some NWO maybe or something. But
there's so many.
Yeah. And so like, I remember people like, so the nerds would wear those shirts, but then there would be like a jock wearing one of those shirts or something. And I remember that too. So to talk about it from a personal level, like I was not really into wrestling after elementary school, early middle school. And I never really was that into it. I do remember the action figures, those WWF action figure, that line was iconic. Like one of the iconic toy lines in the 80s and into the 90s. Like up there with TMNT and G.I. Joe and Transformers and stuff like that. It was a big toy line. So I remember that, but I wasn't into it that much. And I would watch it, but I think I was just vacillating because again, I was in elementary school or whatever, like just whatever was on. And and probably not even really making the connection like this is WCW and this is WWF. And maybe there's some other stuff that we saw at some point. So what really like lost its luster for me and why I wasn't really into it or why I didn't stick with it is that, and I've said this many times, but I saw a connectivity between G.I. Joe and wrestling in that the camp is part of the fun. And so having G.I. Joe, if G.I. Joe, the organization was just a bunch of soldiers, like infantrymen that were just like normal people, and Cobra was just a terrorist organization with random people in it. That would be so boring. What's fun about it is that like G.I. Joe has a deep sea diver named Deep Six, and he goes underwater and like disables the explosives at the Cobra Frogmen, and Copperhead is like left there, and like everyone's colorful and fucking crazy and has personality, and it's the iconic opening of the G.I. Joe movie around the Statue of Liberty, which is like one of my very favorite, like, and I love that. And I would love to see that recreated in a real G.I. Joe movie if they ever did like a good one.
Oh, it'd be so good.
The Crimson Guard punching the cameraman and like all that kind of stuff. Like it's super cool. There's color. And I felt like wrestling was the same. It's like there are these characters that are over the top, and it's not, and in the 90s, it just seemed like it became white man in spandex, black guy in spandex, which is cool, but like no mask, no panache, no. And I think back to like the wrestlers I liked, and I'm like, these guys were, it was weird. I don't know why Rick Rude was the way he was, but it was funny as fuck, you know.
It went backwards to G.I. Joe, kind of.
Right. It, like
where G.I. Joe started with the fatigues and the conventional stuff.
Right, exactly. Right. And then by like 83, 84, it becomes, that's exactly right. And and frankly, like that's a lot of people's like favorite G.I. Joe is that early G.I. Joe. I'm like, that's the most boring G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
Like who gives a shit?
Yeah. It's
like they're all the same, you know?
Yeah.
So I just felt like from my point of view, wrestling became too homogenous and it lost its luster of what I loved about it for that reason. And then I never really was into it again. But the thing that I want to say, and Micah and I reflect on this a lot because Micah was a big wrestling fan and I think she still is. I just don't think she really watches it.
Just mention that.
I often say this, like when we see, there's always funny clips and like funny storylines and things going on, and we like share them online with each other in there. And it's my favorite thing about wrestling, which is like, what the fuck is going on here? Like really think about it. It's like we have an arena full of people. There's a wrestling ring in the middle of it. And two people have a beef with each other about some random thing. Like someone's a hostage on the stage and someone has erected a fence around it. And there happens to be all these tables here. It's like so what, when you really think about it, it's like, what is going on here? Why are we into this? This is so strange.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as an insult because it's obviously huge, but there is some sort of like, it's fun to reflect on it. What is this?
I think the meta.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
No, I was gonna say. I think like that kind of like self-awareness is what makes it captivating. Like WWE, for example, doesn't let cursing happen. So like when The Rock is like whipping Cody Rhodes with a belt, and he's like, you know, fucking bitch, and he's saying all this stuff, and they're just letting it go through. You know, the crowd's freaking out. He's like, oh, he's cursing. They're letting it happen. You know, like I think that almost meta experience adds to it a bit, like that awareness of like, oh, I didn't see the tables that were set up like before the show and were like hidden by like a black tablecloth until they got yanked at the last minute, and now they're perfectly here to get like shoved onto from like the top of the stage or something along those lines. Like I think that is it's funny you mentioned that because I think that is a big part of that experience.
It's strange. Yeah, like it's one of the strangest things that really, think about it. Like you go to a play, you suspend disbelief in the theater. People are actors. You're watching a performance, and you go to a sporting event and you presume that it's real, and wrestling isn't, but there is real wrestling. But you go to like a hockey game and it's a sport with the goals and I don't mean literal goals that you shoot in, like things that you're supposed to do and rules and all this. And then wrestling is like some sort of confluence of fake sport, script, crowd energy, and storyline, and it's really weird.
But there's got to be some sort of improvisation as well involved.
Right, like
there's got to be.
There's a YouTube channel that I watch sometimes. God, I wish I remember what the name of it was. And it's so over my head. It's so deeply wrestling nerd that I really don't even get it. But it's about like it's reels of often things that go wrong in all these wrestling matches.
Oh wow, yeah, that's
and
cool.
How you have to kind of like react and how it happens fairly often.
Oh, sure.
And
chaos.
But it's like a lot of comedy and things interspersed and like all this inside joke shit I don't get. So but I watch it sometimes and it's interesting. And I'm like, yeah, it's just it's a very unique thing. It's a really, really unique thing that they've just stumbled upon. And I know that there's like all of this history to wrestling pre WWF and WCW in the I guess the 60s and 70s, especially in like all of the territories that people would like do these wrestling. Like it was a cartel basically, right? Isn't that kind of how it's understood? Like there were like in the Southeast, there was like one wrestling company, and like this part of Texas, there was another. And in this, and the idea of like WCW or whatever it was, WWF or whatever came first was like, we're going to just like do it, all of it nationally. And like, and it's kind of ingenious. It's not for me, but I get it in some way. Like I get the spectacle, and I love the permutation of people that like it. It's a very unique group of enthusiasts. And because you can have a person like Ramon who really loves it. And then you can have, you know, people that are jocks, or like, I always think like there's a little bit of crossover with hair metal and
absolutely,
and, you know,
that's a huge part of it.
So, but yeah, the whole like what the hell is going on thing. And Micah and I, like, we just have a couple of like wrestling touchstones that we always reference. One of them specifically, Micah. Oh, she's gone. Damn. There's a wrestling. There's like an older woman. This goes around every once in a while. People have already seen it where she just gets smashed in the face with a guitar, like an acoustic guitar, and like we just love that. I think her name is May something.
Is she a wrestler? Or
she was like back in the day she was, and she still kind of like floats around. I'll try to find it.
That's great
when I pass it off. But yeah, so we even as not a viewer of wrestling, I still have like these touchstones and these comedic things. Like think about, I know that Vince McMahon is like, a lot of shit. I really actually not even totally caught off of what he's been alleged to have done and all the rest, but I know he's not really involved anymore. But
yeah,
he's like one of the most memeable people in the history of mankind.
Yeah, like I know what he did is so shitty, but if you just look at the old clips this guy has done, like how far he went for the product, like it's insane. Like there's him in like a fucking church, like trying to find like Christ, because like he's like his character is veered so far off the path, and like Triple H is there and they start fighting in a church. I'm just like there's just so many absurd clips from that like Attitude Era, early 2000s era of wrestling with Vince McMahon in it. Like for as much as he sucks, he did build that company so much with like the lengths he went to alongside the people that were there. But it's still so funny. You're right. He's so memeable. It's just like I still get a fucking kick out of some of the shit he did.
Him just smelling the money, like that meme, and like it's just like there's so many, or him like beating the shit out of someone in a hospital bed or something like that.
Yeah, there was. I
think he was the one being getting the shit beat out.
Okay,
out of him, which is still
that's good shit.
It's even funnier, honestly.
That's yeah, no, definitely, I agree.
I gotta look that up.
There was a clip I saw of him where like he like I think it's just like they work so well out of context, like him like screaming like, where's that son of a bitch, and he's like sprinting down like a hallway looking for somebody. Like I saw that one get reused a lot. There was one I saw the other day. I was like, I can't believe they did this, but like Big Show was humped over like the ropes, knocked out, and this is like when DX was really popular, so it was Triple H and Shawn Michaels, and they like literally ripped down the pants of Big Show and then shove Vince's face like right in his ass. Yeah. I'm just like, what the fuck is this, bro?
He was like he was a consummate showman for sure. Yeah.
Oh, he was. Yeah. I mean, he's the Godfather, right? I mean, really, he would be kind of heralded as one of the guys, one of the pillars. Right?
He is the creator of WrestleMania,
which is insane. Like it all goes. It
created an annual event that became like a worldwide global.
Oh, it was huge. Like that was like such a currency when I was in junior high school that you were going to WrestleMania. Like you were the shit. Even if you weren't into wrestling, like that was the hot ticket for an 80s kid. But what I was going to say about the thing about what I was going to ask you guys, because I don't know, but at some point that production value was raised where it would cut away outside the ring and you would have all these montages, these dramatic things happening in hospitals and churches and stuff like that. When did that take place where it got so big, where it became like this cinematic thing? It wasn't just about the fight, it was about the ongoing rivalries outside and all that kind of thing. They became movies essentially.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was during the 80s and 90s, you know.
Yeah, I think it was like more the 90s, just in the sense that we were talking about Gene Okerlund before, and it's like I remember more of that. Like there would be drama in the concourse, or someone would be interviewed after the match, but it would all be kind of like self-contained. And then it started to get. I actually am friendly with and friends really with an ex writer at. He was actually the person that put me in touch with or he ended up working in marketing later, and it's how he got together with our ad seller. And he was a writer for a long time in Connecticut, where the company is located.
Right.
And it's just so interesting. Like, yeah, people would just come up with this stuff, and I think they were just given more and more. His name's John Carl, by the way, if you want to look him up.
That's so cool.
But yeah, it's like it seemed like they got more and more rope and like more and more leeway. I actually remember, because I used to, between Northeastern and Long Island, or when I lived up there or whatever in New England, we would always drive down the 95 or whatever, and that WWE building, like whatever that building was, is right there. It's like huge.
It's in Stamford, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I passed a bunch.
Which is where ESPN is too, I think, right?
I think so.
Or around there. Yeah.
Yep. I think it's in Stamford. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, Randy Savage was a big part of that off outer ring drama. There was a lot of fights over Miss Elizabeth, his wife.
I had such a crush on her, dude.
Oh, dude. She was like the Mary Jane of kids in the 80s and 90s, and I'm only finding out she died in 2003 at the age of 42.
No way.
So tragic. Yeah, it's really hard to see all these wrestlers. That's another thing about wrestlers, is that a lot of people in that culture die really, really young.
Yeah, because now they're much safer. Like, I know wrestling fans get pissed when people do like dangerous moves. Like, it's gotten to that point where they're like, what an unsafe move. Like, why would you do that? Like WWE or AEW, John Moxley, someone like put literally a spiked bat in his back. And I mean, it was so stuck that during the shot, they actually show it, like they were trying to pull it out because they needed to get to the next move. Dude, and they couldn't get it out. It was like fucking wedged in him. And everyone in the comments is like, this is stupid. Like props to him for going this far for his craft, but this is fucking stupid. So yeah, like most wrestlers are way safer nowadays, but back then, yeah, they were like, they didn't know how to protect, so they were getting dropped on their heads, like I think Chris Benoit, obviously famously, like someone who, he had the brain of like a 90-year-old or an 80-year-old, but because of just how many concussions, how many times he got hit in the head. And obviously we know what that led to. That was like really I think the powder keg moment where like wrestler safety had to be taken more seriously, because these guys were just getting kicked in the face way too often.
Yeah. And again, it goes back, Matty, to like, and for what reason you have a beef with, like, again, just the storyline, like arc. It's like, why is this guy got a spiked bat?
Yeah.
And I'm like, why is he attacking this other guy with a spiked bat? It's interesting. It's just, I'm glad that
it's like the definition of shock humor, right? Like sometimes people they're not funny, but they say crazy shit just because he's going to get like a rise out of people.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's the same thing. When you put like a spiked bat in your back, it's like everyone's going to look at your product and be like, why the fuck is this show letting someone do this? Like, what?
They kept raising the bar, right? It's like the Romans with the Colosseum.
Sure.
Thousands of years ago. Like, it was like the weapons then, they introduced wild animals into the mix. Like the pageantry just got more and more exaggerated to bring in the audience, where they felt like they had to, which is kind of sad. Yeah. They were always trying to one up themselves. So it's kind of fucked.
Yeah. I mean, John Moxley gets made fun of a lot because like he'll always make himself bleed after any match. Like he'll just get punched in the face, and he like, people always say like he's like, you'll see him like blading, just cutting his head open, and just, you got to wonder, because sometimes it's like a personal expression of who this person is, and you're like, why does this guy always need to bleed? Why does he always need to like have shit like wedged in his back, like getting hit with chairs? Like, why is he so hardcore? Like, but that's just to them the way they express their love for what they do. Like, look how far I'll go for this. Like, you can't find another wrestler who will go this far. So I think it's a level of like one-up culture too, which like,
yeah, absolutely. I always wondered that, Matty, like what's the percentage of actual real blood to like squibs and blood packets? I always thought it was like 50-50.
You can usually tell, because by the end of a match, if it just looks like ketchup's on their face and it's like dried up and withered away, it's fake. But like when it's real, it's like it's like a runny river, bro. You can immediately tell they're bleeding for real, and it's like, oh shit, that's a lot of blood. It's always coming out of their head too. It's not like, you never see like an arm wound and you're like, oh man, their arm's bloody. It's like out of their temple, and it's like streaking into their eyes, and you're like, that's not a good place to be bleeding from. And he's like, oh, and you're gonna like get suplexed 4 times in a row now. That's where it gets real. And I think that's where people start to get like super invested, because they're like, is he actually gonna get hurt? Or is she gonna get hurt?
And the storyline is that you're doing all of this to try to win a car or something from
to get on to the next round for your championship belt that you're scripted to lose. Like, I don't know, man.
So interesting. You know another interesting connection. This is a random one, Matty, but I know you'll appreciate it. Is what was that guy's name? Daniel Bryan, the guy that was around just for a little while and then he retired. His whole yes thing, is the Islanders fan, like is what Islanders fans do when they score, and they have for like the last 10 or 12 years. Yeah, which is so interesting. So there's like crossover there too. And it's to the point now where no one even really, it's like, what is even the provenance of this? Like people probably don't even really know what it is at this point.
Yeah, no, but he's a great, I'm glad you brought up because he's a great example of, I guess, what makes wrestling storytelling probably interesting is the fans can like really hijack a story. Like there'll be this plan creatively, like we're going to give this person the belt after this match happens, but the fans are like, we don't like that person. Like we really like this person. They'll keep cheering them on. And usually what happens is like, they'll try to, the creatives will try to like bull rush and just be like, we're going to ignore them. They'll get over it. But with Daniel Bryan was an example where like Vince McMahon had to make him champion because the audience was so in love with Daniel Bryan. They had someone else planned, but they changed plans because like the yes chants were so loud and he had like the biggest following. Like he was the next in line. Like he had to be champion. It was good for the product. But that wasn't like the plan. And so I think that's also what makes the story compelling is like, if you cheer loud enough for certain people, they're probably going to get rewarded. So
yeah, it's funny at Islanders games too, because he said yes, but he also did like the thing with his arms.
Yeah.
And then and people did do that, but then slowly over time at Islanders games, it just became the yes chant, which I think is really cool. And so like, it's almost goosebump worthy, like during playoff games where the place is packed and like loud and they score the game winning goal or whatever. And everyone's just chanting, yes, yes, yes. It's like, it's super, it's actually it feels very European soccer actually. Like the whole, and I don't know why, is he from Long Island or something? I have no idea. Like, why did we even, I really don't know.
No, think about I'm so glad you brought this up because now it's dawning on me and you guys think about it and whoever's listening and watching this outside, think about it. The crossover between professional hockey and wrestling is a real thing.
Yeah.
Think about who you know that you loves wrestling and who you know that loves hockey, and the crossover is so tangible. Think about that.
Definitely.
Huge.
Definitely. Yeah, Islanders or Rangers fans back in the day would have been a WFW.
And hair metal.
WCW. And hair metal, yeah.
I'll throw that into the mix as a trifecta.
Yeah. And then hockey tried to imbibe a little bit of wrestling, and now I think it's kind of getting away from it a little bit. That's kind of like, the hockey that I grew up with was crazy
with the violence.
Yeah. Which I loved. I like, there was something cool about Rob Ray and Ty Domi and all these guys that like would just beat the fuck out of each other. Mm-hmm. But then it is very similar to wrestling though, where it's like, why are you doing this? And then everyone just taps their sticks on the ice. And like, it's like a rallying kind of cry, like a sacrifice for it's really, I mean, Matty, I think would agree. It's like, it's a sacrifice for the team's morale, right? To like get everyone hyped up and crazy. And but to me, I'm like, I vacillated over time on it where I'm like, and I think the league itself has too. There are teams don't have, for the most part, the Rangers actually have recently, but most teams don't have a goon anymore. There's no Matt Rempe is a goon.
Yeah.
But most, because it's a waste of a roster spot, and there are not that many fights anymore. I mean, it would be, when I was a kid, you almost never didn't see a fight in at least one fight in a game ever. And now you can go games and games and games and watching a team where you don't see any fights.
Yeah, I feel like you got the Blackhawks to blame for that because I feel like they were the first team that they kind of remind me of like the Golden State Warriors. Like that's just that like the high skill, like they did not need to grind anyone. They were just really fucking talented. And every team's like, oh, speed wins games. Oh, skill wins games. Mm-hmm. Like we don't need to fight and rally like this arbitrary hype, like we don't need any of that. We just need to be better. And
right. And we don't
why
need
not
to
get
waste...
a guy who can fight and score.
Right. Exactly.
I was just going to say does that exist?
It does, but it's not there. You should just be, there were literally in the 80s, for instance, and like into the 90s, there would be players on teams, your roster size is limited. So like rosters and you're constantly changing, which, but there would be players that would play 2 or 3 minutes that were there specifically just to go and like fuck someone up.
Intimidate. Yeah.
And I think it's what Matty's saying. It's like at some point they were like, this is a waste of a roster spot. Like we actually could just use like more defensive depth or something.
Makes sense.
And yeah, maybe the Blackhawks were the team to have first really articulated that as well. But like, yeah, like, I'm always surprised by who fights now. Because it seems like more people will actually fight. Like there's a more willing pool of participants, but they're not goons. And it's radically it's a radically different situation now than it was then. So, but yeah, I am. The argument for fighting in hockey, by the way, is that it's like the ultimate self-governing principle of keeping everyone honest, that no one does anything crazy because there'll be a real penalty for it.
There'll be repercussions.
And that is the premise of fighting in hockey, and the whole physicality of hockey is to like pay a price. And people do think that there's a certain level of honesty there, but it goes to show you how much the game has changed. I mean, think about Wayne Gretzky when he went to the Kings. You know, he was playing with Luc Robitaille, obviously a great goal scorer and prolific passer of the puck. But then he was also playing with Marty McSorley, because to protect Gretzky, you needed like a goonish style guy on the ice at the time. So if you ever took a run at Wayne Gretzky, you know, Marty McSorley would be on your ass. And it was part of the self-governing, you know, but it's weird that was the case. Like he wasn't playing with the most talented people actually on his line.
But that's just fun. I could see that being fun. There's a bodyguard.
Yeah. In fact, when the Oilers traded Gretzky, they traded McSorley with him.
See, that just, as somebody who doesn't know hockey, that just sounds fun to me. Yeah, that sounds really entertaining and smart to put fannies in seats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, who doesn't want to see that?
Anyway, it's not a hockey thing. Matty and I could talk hockey privately one day.
Yeah, I love that. I haven't watched much this season, to be honest, though. It's because I just knew with Colin, you'll know this based on just the teams you've cheered for, that like when you just see that kind of off season happen, we were like, you know, we were on the cusp. We were like going head to head with the Panthers who went on to win the cup. They were better than us. Probably need to make some signings this off season to become a better team. And we're just the same fucking team. I was like, we're going to get blown out this year. And we did. We've just been a horrible team all year.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just we only win by like barely scratching and clawing by. Like our defense is terrible. We traded players that I never would have traded outside of Trouba. Like we just are a way worse team. And I'm just like, yep, I'm not watching. Like this is a bad product. So I haven't watched much hockey this year compared to how much I usually do each season. But it's just
I've been reflecting on this a little bit, and sorry to talk about hockey so much. I know the audience is probably not into it. But
that's the way it goes.
The Islanders were bad for so long between the early 90s. Like the Islanders that I grew up with when I was really young, the 91 team, the 92 team, these were really good teams. The Islanders almost went to the Cup finals in 92. That was a famous conference finals against the Penguins, Lemieux, Yager, Barrasso, Ron Francis. I mean, fucking amazing team. And then from there, they lost in 94 in the first round of the Rangers. The Rangers won the Cup that year. They were swept 4-0, and then they didn't make the playoffs at all until 2002. I went to one of those games in 2002. I've talked about this in the past. I was at that famous game with the Sean Bates penalty shot, which is like one of the most famous moments in Islanders playoff history post Stanley Cup Finals. And then they didn't make the playoffs. They lost that. They lost. They were the 8th seed. They lost. Then they didn't make the playoffs again until 2006, and then they lost again in the first round. And then they didn't make the playoffs at all for years. I think another 8 years. And then they kind of started to make the playoffs regularly. And I've been reflecting on this where I'm like, they're not good, but we did go to the conference finals twice in a row, not only a few years ago, which was unimaginable. Like we would just be holding on and like, can we just make the playoffs once every few years or And so I bring this up because the Ranger experience and the Islander experience have been a little different, where Islanders teams like the bubble team that's playing this year has been the team for 15 years or so, obviously different players over time, where I watch it every year because I never really hope for more than like maybe they'll make the playoffs on the last day of the season. And that's the exact situation they're in right now.
Wow.
You know,
how long have they had their current coach?
Patrick Waugh, his second year.
Oh, he's just in. Okay.
We made a very questionable coaching change a few years ago, like incredibly questionable coaching change that I think made the team. Barry Trotz is our coach. That Barry Trotz was the Stanley Cup winning coach of the Capitals, and then came to and was the Predators coach for a long time too, and then came to New York and it was the best Islanders team of my life. And then they fired him like after a few years, which was weird. And there's a very incestuous thing going on with coaching in the NHL. Micah and I often reflect on it. It's very weird. Like coaches just don't go away. They'll coach like 8 different teams.
Yeah.
Like
it's
very different. Football is like constantly bringing in new people and filtering old people out. But it's like John Tortorella just got fired, right, by the Flyers. Like he will
And all the
absolutely
Rangers
coach.
fans are like, bring him to the Rangers now. I'm just like, why?
It's just weird, and these guys just bounce around. So there's a weird culture in hockey with all of that too. But anyway, it doesn't matter. No one cares.
We've yet to hear from Mean Gene much on wrestling. We got to get Gene's take, because Gene's an interesting generational perspective, because he's older than Kyle, but younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to hear what Gene has to say about wrestling.
Yeah, I might have been at the exact perfect age for wrestling back in the day. I fell off of wrestling in the late '90s once I started to grow up, and once those answers of whether it was real or fake were starting to really crystallize, and it's like, oh yeah, this really is fake, and it's like, how long am I going to be entertained by this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think one thing that I always remembered, that I always kept in my heart, was that magic, thinking that it was real.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I knew it was fake, it was deeply, deeply entertaining, these storylines, because this is the closest thing we had to real life superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
This is the closest thing we had to real life Saturday morning cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
This was the closest thing we had to, a Fox Kids superhero cartoon. Seeing the Undertaker come back or whatever, or seeing the Hardy Boys just pop out of nowhere. The Hardy Boys were never like a main character of anything, but they were always good fellas, and they were always around, and you always like to see them win for a little bit.
I saw them at an amateur wrestling show. They were great in person, dude. Like,
yeah,
past their prime, but still awesome.
Yeah, I barely remember like who they are, but I just remembered every time I heard their name and saw them like in the ring, I was like, hell yeah, dude! Like I'm glad these guys are here.
Yeah.
Like there was always a good that they always get. These characters always gave out vibes that you can always attach to. But these are superheroes. These are large superheroes. It's also so crazy how many celebrities have come out of there, like Dave Bautista, of course, The Rock.
Oh, right.
Hulk Hogan is now politically active as well. All the ones that still stay alive. Like, it's amazing that Hulk Hogan is still alive. He brought down Gawker. Like,
I know him and Peter Thiel.
he was absolutely instrumental in bringing down a foundation, a cornerstone of the fucking New York blog scene. Like, that's ridiculous, and that's real life. That's not kayfabe at all.
Yeah,
that's real life, because he was fucking somebody. Like, it's ridiculous.
What was it?
Like,
Bubba the Love Sponge, his wife, right? Like, it was like some radio host's wife, I think. And the whole thing was funded by Peter Thiel. I mean, that's because Gawker, dude, it's one, I personally think it's one of the great stories of like laying in wait, like a sniper, for people that don't know, like Peter Thiel is a gay conservative financier and tech guy, and Gawker outed him as being gay.
Oh, that's right.
And then like he just waited and then secretly funded this lawsuit against Gawker. He funded Hulk Hogan's entire lawsuit. And
did he really?
Yeah. And he was the one. And then afterwards, he's like, fuck you guys. It's like one of the great revenge stories.
Yeah. He laid the TNT in which why, like sites like Kotaku are struggling right now because Thiel and Hulk Hogan pulled the rug out of that whole foundation. So Gawker, Jezebel, Gizmodo, Kotaku, all of that start to fall apart. That's why Deadspin exists.
Right. And by the way, I would note, I don't remember the exact details, so I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Hulk Hogan was pretty righteous in what he was going after, because I'm pretty sure they published his sex tapes. Right.
They did. Yeah, they did.
So they can go fuck themselves. I mean, that's incredibly over the fucking line.
I mean, outing Thiel as gay, is also like, you don't need to do that.
No one cared because Thiel's a Republican. Or even at the time, because it was Valleywag, I think, that specifically did that, which is an old website that hasn't existed in a long time.
Wow, I don't remember that. Yeah.
Valleywag was actually a very seminal website. It was a Silicon Valley gossip website where it was like very specific stories about people in that tech scene.
In tech.
Yeah, people might remember it. It was part of that Gawker network.
Yeah, I barely remember it. But yeah, that's just super, and it ties into my topic later about cartoons, right? And superhero cartoons and everything like that. But also video games. I was really, really into the wrestling of video games. So here are some on Wikipedia. I remember playing the 1989 game WrestleMania. Like, it was just called WrestleMania. like imagine if a game came out called Super Bowl, not even Super Bowl 1 or Super Bowl 13.
Was that LJN?
This is LJN Acclaim.
I remember that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they later came out with WWF Super WrestleMania on the Super Nintendo, which was massive. And then just 1 year later, WWF Royal Rumble, which was basically the same thing, but just with like more characters, and they got the Royal Rumble mode, So this was like Street Fighter for wrestling geeks,
That's so cool.
And a lot of these wrestling games were great all the way up until the N64. I used to play the hell out of them. I think the last big, great wrestling game I played was really, and this is a game that a lot of people remember, and this is the same developers, but Def Jam Fight for New York, it came out of that whole strain of awesome wrestling games, really talking, thinking about crowd control and crowd mechanics, and using weaponry and grappling and everything like that. So
what console was that for, Gene? What generation was
Fight for New York?
PS2
That was a
right?
PS2.
Yeah.
PS2
era. So
Isn't it funny, Gene, how, because Dagan had brought up earlier too, it's just like the N64 specifically was the wrestling machine. And it's so funny because I was an N64 owner, obviously, but I didn't give a fuck. So I had friends that would come over and play or whatever. And sometimes we'd rent those games, but it was always a mystery to people, like, why don't you own any of these iconic wrestling games? It was the Genesis and the N64, I remember, being the wrestling machines.
Yep.
But
N64 had like WWF, like No Mercy, all the SmackDown games like Raw, and the N64 worked because it had that Corvette style of 4-player multiplayer ports. So the N64 was kind of like the multiplayer console.
Oh, definitely.
Like for those few years, for sure, right?
Oh my God, yeah. And isn't it funny too? We were talking about this on Sacred a few weeks ago. I always really marvel at MLB The Show and how well that game does, and how it subconsciously, no doubt, made millions of people PlayStation gamers, because that was where they had to be to play it until recent years when the MLB forced Sony to publish it everywhere. And there was probably a subconscious or maybe conscious thing where wrestling fans owned N64s. I mean, it must have been the biggest wrestling fans owned an N64 for those games, very specifically how there are people that really own PlayStations or started playing on PlayStation for the show. And you never really think about it that way. And in other words, they're really important. Yeah, they're important.
Yeah, it's funny because like when I think about like all the Nintendo like retro like YouTubers I watch, like they also are all really into wrestling, which is really funny.
Weird.
So yeah, like you guys bring up an interesting point about how wrestling is like a cultural crossroads for so many different types of people, cultural backgrounds. It was a global thing. Here's how big WrestleMania was. In WrestleMania 3, the person who opened the show and sang America the Beautiful was none other than Aretha Franklin. That's how serious WrestleMania is as a cultural like battleground, as a cultural stage. Aretha Franklin,
that's amazing,
was there. Literally the greatest female to ever sing.
Ever.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like the Beatles showing up to WrestleMania. That's insane.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's
interesting.
Shit.
Muhammad Ali was a commentator and presenter there. So it's like, and so like it circles back right around to Vince McMahon, who's a complete shit heel and a horrible person, but also a genius in terms of being the people always call Trump the modern day P.T. Barnum. It's been McMahon this whole time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And they were boys.
Yeah, and they were boys. They learn from each other.
Trump was in a bunch of stuff with on.
Yeah, they had that. Oh my God, what was that? The millionaire match or something like that. It was like Trump and I think McMahon, right? They were like facing off, and they were representatives of their own stables, and they had people like face off. I think Vince McMahon ended up losing, and he had to like shave his head or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic.
And one of the WrestleManias was like sponsored by Trump too. The Trump Hotel. Goes back to my birthday. People think I'm lying that the Trump Hotel like sponsored my birthday, and it's like, no, the Trump Hotel will sponsor anything. They'll sponsor my birthday and they sponsor WrestleMania.
Both of equal importance, might I add.
Yeah, exactly. Both historic events in history.
There you go.
But what else about wrestling? I remember when Hulk Hogan turned heel. That was a huge moment. That was like the first time I felt like pop culture betrayal. because I really, really adored Hulk Hogan. I am a real American hero. And we could, Colin and I are going to really dig into GI Joe, but like for me, Hulk Hogan was like a real life GI Joe character. He was, and a fucking Sergeant Slaughter.
Yeah,
He's an actual GI Joe fucking character.
Yeah,
he's actually GI Joe.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, when I watch WWF, it's like I'm watching my cartoon character, like in real life, in the flesh, screaming at Mean Gene Okerlund. So
and it just made sense. It just made sense back then. We were like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it did make sense. Like, I never even thought twice about it. I was like, yeah, I have a Sergeant Slaughter figure. You had one. I mean, that's where I think and I was like, so I absorbed that, and I'm like, yeah, he's just he's in both of these worlds for some reason.
It was like, of course.
Yeah, he's just both of these worlds. So that's a crossover with like superheroes, and GI Joe is very like Marvel, like all the GI Joe comics back in the day were all Marvel too, right? So and like there was a lot of crossover with GI Joe and Marvel superheroes too.
Yeah,
so that's why it's like, this really is like leaping from the pages of the comic book onto the TV screen. These characters are larger than life. The Road Warriors. Oh my God, there's so many.
Dude, I loved those characters. They were so silly.
They were so great.
Yeah, it's so interesting because like they're all huge. Like I was not a jock, but yet all of my favorite people in the world were these massive, pre Gears of War people. These are the people. These are the men that Gears of War characters were based on. Literally. And now Dave Bautista actually wants to be in a Gears of War movie. So it's very interesting that a skinny kid like me who's into like Radiohead and Nirvana was also really, really super into, these old white men like screaming at each other. And I was like, dude,
yeah,
I've been kind of thinking about getting back into wrestling, because it's so popular. It seems to be so fun. And, now that the everything about kayfabe and everything like that is out there, it just seems like it'd just be a good time to just kind of soak in. So I've, any LSM listeners out there, if this is like, where do I start with Gundam or where do I start with Final Fantasy?
No.
Like, this is like my call out to where do I start with wrestling?
Yeah.
Like, what's a good modern show that I missed out on that is like a good collection of all the characters and storylines that I might need? Is there a good touch point? Is there a Yakuza 0 that I can start for wrestling?
I feel like my suggestion would just be go on the YouTube channel and just watch a few clips, and you'll just kind of draw an immediate attachment to who you're most interested in. And I think just as you watch it, it'll just develop from there. But that'd be my suggestion. Just jump in cold, Yeah,
I think part of the reason why I hopped out of wrestling was because the characters like I remember like when Hulk Hogan turned evil, I was kind of like losing interest because I was like, oh, my goat is a bad guy now,
Yeah.
I guess fuck everything.
I remember the ripple effect of that. I was too old, but I remember the kids, like my friends' younger siblings, like I remember them being, like gobsmacked by that. It was like finding out Darth Vader was Luke's father, but like the real life sort of more modern version of that.
Kind of, even though they're both fake. Yeah, but you're right. You're right. And it's a little bit of a shocking moment. It was like, I remember when Superman died in the comics, and that was like I remember being in the playground with my boys, and we all silently like wept together. Because Superman died in Superman issue number 90 or whatever. And we all read the comic together. And we saw Lois Lane cradle, Clark's head, and
that's a great illustration, by the way.
Yeah, awesome illustration. Like it's like 9/11 was based on that shit. In terms of the imagery or whatever.
That's a hot take,
but I remember feeling really invested in these fake stories. Because that's the power of fantasy, like we're invested in the fake stories of our video games. Sometimes video games still move us to the point of tears.
Absolutely.
And we know that Kratos or whoever are real, but that's the beauty of the fiction. And that's the wild thing about wrestling is that it's a mixture of old school gladiator sports and the modern sensibilities of pop culture and storytelling and narrative. We've always been into dudes hitting each other. That's just human nature, That's why Colin and I fucking like watch all these fight videos all the time, because
good shit.
Because it's interesting. We'll watch dogs fight. So why the fuck not when we watch humans beat the shit out of each other, whether it's fake or real?
The fight videos are again Texas street fights. Shout out. Guy gets
Shout
like
out to Texas Street.
guy. Yeah, it's the guy in Austin has like the highest quality,
Austin,
like
yeah.
4K. I have no idea, and he's always in the right place.
He's got the gimbal going on.
Yeah.
Like he's got like super steady cam,
Yeah,
4K.
it's like in
camera.
lighting and stuff. It's so
You
good.
don't think he's instigating? He's out there.
No, he's not
instigating a little
instigating. No, these are not instigations. It's like there's like just a few roads in Austin, I guess, like where people go out to drink and there's all these bars and stuff, and there's just fights
bit.
constantly.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah, and he just walks around and waits for it to happen, and he just happens to be there, and it's a whole YouTube channel dedicated to it.
It's actually
Instigating is so funny. That's it's a good. Do you guys watch Mr. Show with David Cross and?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah. There was that old skit of Bob. What's his face? God, I'm blanking on
Odenkirk.
his name. Huh?
Yeah, Bob
Bob
Odenkirk.
Odenkirk.
Yeah, Bob Odenkirk, like lighting a fire like in the forest, and he's like, "Live report: there's a fire that's broken out in the forest right now." And then another reporter shows up and shoots him. And it's like, "We're live right now at the scene of a murder."
Shout out to that show, dude.
Yeah,
News people setting up stories is funny, but
Amazing.
that's what Vince McMahon did. You know, that Vince McMahon convinced a lot of people that he was a serious businessman, and he was. But he was a serious millionaire. That's what Trump did too. You know, that's why everyone believes that he is, you know, the biggest billionaire, even though he isn't. But now he has all these billionaires genuflecting towards him. You know, he won at the end. You know? It's a long story. I throughout this whole conversation, I've been looking at old ass pictures of Vince McMahon. Look, it looks like Vince McMahon has been around since the fucking 1930s, man.
Wild.
Like these photos in the 80s, like look so fucking old.
Yeah.
You know, he looks so young, and he looks like he's from the 1950s. It looks like Martin Scorsese could do a movie on him.
Yeah, he
He's
does
vapor.
have that look.
You
You're
know?
right about that.
Yeah, and
He
he's still
definitely has that
around,
look.
and he's now under a federal investigation. That's crazy. What a long ass story.
Yeah.
The Vince McMahon story is. It's crazy. Just like how long the fucking Donald Trump story is. These two guys have been around and they're still fucking doing shit.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy.
Yeah, their arc is still happening.
Yeah. Miss Elizabeth is dead. You know, why? You know?
Long dead.
Why does
by
a
the
hot
way.
girl have to die? You know?
Yeah.
God damn it.
yeah.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Mm.
You know?
That's
And
really
then the ugly rich guy is stuck around.
You know what I remembered while you guys were talking? I've grown to be a big fan of boxing, but as a kid, I recognized it as being pretty brutal. But I always remember as a kid knowing it was real, but also thinking, all right, well, at least they only are allowed to use their fists, right? Just in professional boxing or whatever kind of actual boxing. Then when wrestling came out, and I was old enough to recognize that it was at least in parts fake, right? Still thought it would be brutal. But here's where the rubber meets the road a little bit. And I don't know much about it, but MMA, when mixed martial arts came on the scene, that seems like a proper mix of actual physical violence like boxing and something where you could use your whole body like wrestling, but they're obviously holding back because it's in large part a show. That's the fucked up thing. And I don't mean to make this topic into mixed martial arts. That's another topic for another day. But that's why mixed martial arts terrifies me, because these guys are actually beating each other senseless with their entire bodies. And they're not pulling punches, and it's not staged, right? They're just going after it. It's just it's just a
And it's
prize
like
fight.
people always think of the head, but it's like you could just get kicked in. Like they'll go like calf kicks, knee kicks, like just have a fucked up knee for the rest of your life. Like
No idea how you do that.
Yeah, I love the videos. There's like a videos of people, like normal people, getting kicked in the leg by like an MMA, like asking an MMA fighter to like just kick them once in the leg, and like how much it fucks them up. And MMA is one of those things where I intellectually understand it. I've said this in the past. It's a kind of an old story, but I very distinctly remember watching the original UFCs when I was a kid. They were rentable on videotape, and they were on pay-per-view. I just didn't know at the time, because it was literally like Street Fighter for like a few of them. It was literally like a sumo wrestler would fight a karate guy. And like that kind of shit. And then I think it all quickly just went like everyone's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu, because that's like the
So interesting thing. UFC started because it was inspired by Street Fighter, literally.
Yeah,
really?
I believe it. Like, it would be like literally like a grappling wrestler against a kung fu dude.
Mixing
and then I think
styles.
ultimately, Brazilian jiu-jitsu became like kind of the center of it all, because it was the most multidisciplinary. They broke it basically, and that's cool.
Yeah.
So I
wrestlers really broke it. Nowadays, like it's about control time. And so UFC is a little boring right now, because like you'll have these guys who just like are so strong, Like they can fucking push a car, bro. And they'll just like pull someone down on the ground. They'll just control them. They'll just lay on them basically.
Oh,
and
I see.
It's called wrestle fucking. Like it's
So
just like
do 'em
you just
quickly.
you just get wrestle fucked for like 25 minutes straight, and the match is over. It's like, well, he won. He dominated the fight, and it's boring, bro. It's bad TV. You know, I can only imagine what Dana White's thinking because like people are losing some interest in the product.
Yeah.
Like we're like, to me, I like to watch Fight Night because these are the guys trying to get to the main card on UFC. Knock each other the fuck out, bro. Like it's like brutal fights. Brutal.
They're hungry.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say was I've seen it. I've watched it many times. My boss at IGN for many years, Mark Ryan Silly, was a huge UFC fan. So I would often watch fights with him, and he was really into it, and we would talk about it and all the rest. But it is very violent, and I dig violence sometimes in my media and sport, whatever. It's cool.
Would you watch real fight videos? Yeah, I thought
yeah,
you'd
violent.
love it.
But that's what I was going to say was like the fight videos are more about like the Karen. There's a lot of different energies in those fights. They're not. I don't want to watch a snuff film. I want to watch like these two dudes have a sloppy fight in a bagel shop. You know, like where neither of them have ever fought in their life. That's like, I think people are kind of misunderstanding when Gene and I are talking about fight videos. It's typically that sort of thing where it's like people that it's an awkward situation in a Walmart where two moms are fighting and pulling each other's hair. It's not.
I know what you mean.
It's not people smash. It's not American History X or something like that. You know, like
no,
and
no.
God forbid.
The ones Colin and I send each other is usually is guaranteed that if one of us send each other, like a titty is popping out.
Yeah.
it's like that's like peak. Like that's when you know, like, oh, this is the perfect clip to send Colin.
Like the great video right now that's going around, and Gene and I both love it. Is there are these predator catcher videos that are on like Kick or whatever where they really like rough the dudes up instead of like calling the cops.
Yo,
and there was one where they were in a store. I don't know if either of you saw this, but Gene and I love it, where they go behind the guy and they pick him up
and they
throw him and then he punches him while he's so it's like an alley-oop punch.
Yeah.
Dude, I was dying when
yeah, they really
the
fucked
same
him up.
guy that throws him also.
No. It's like two guys. It's three of them because there's also a camera guy. It's like one guy's behind him, lifts him up, throws him, and then the guy in front of him just punches him in the face when he's thrown at him. It's like Double Dragon or something.
Like a human body changes directions like in midair. Like it's a fucking video game. Like there's impact. You know?
Yeah, it sounds like Final Fight. I have to go.
It's like the Euphoria engine. Like, you know, it's like a video game engine reaction. Like it's ridiculous.
It's so funny, bro.
Because people are calling it the alley-oop punch, I think.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. That's exactly
it's quite
what
literally
it
that,
sounds
bro. Like this guy gets air too. Like he throws him up in the air and the guy just bitch slaps him and he just drops to the floor. It's unbelievable. It's
So
these are
when you say
unbelievable
fight videos, that's
yeah.
typically what we're talking about. Like people acting out of pocket at Wingstop.
Yeah.
And fighting with the staff or whatever. I'm not trying to watch like real violence.
No, I know what you mean.
But I get it. Like I think like the whole Coliseum style like insanity. If everyone's opting, it's not like the Coliseum where it would be like Christian slaves versus lions or whatever. I'm not, like if everyone's opting into it, right? And that's why dogfighting is so wrong. Actually, I don't know if you guys saw like another ex-NFL player was arrested for like what they're saying is like the worst dogfighting ring they've ever seen.
Oh my god.
Where?
I don't even know. Like it's somewhere in the South, I think.
How could that even take place?
I mean, look, I grew up on Guam and I grew up around people who engaged in cockfighting. One of my first birthday presents ever was a baby chick for me to raise as a fighter.
Little baby Jerry?
Yeah.
Little is that Little Jerry or whatever from Seinfeld, where he has a chicken that fights that's named after him. Little Jerry.
Oh,
Seinfeld.
really? No kidding. Oh, yeah. I think I remember that. But yeah, I had a little chick and I named him Buck, you know, or Buck, you know, because Buck, you know.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the chicken did not fight. I did not want to fight the chicken to fight. But yeah, I've been around cockfighting too. We love that shit. We love to see people and things go at each other, you know?
Yeah, like
there was a cockfighting ring on Long Island in the 90s that everybody knew about, that you could see clearly in this guy's backyard in Wyandanch from the Long Island Railroad.
Wow.
Oh,
like
Wyandanch.
you knew when you went through like when you got between Belmore and Wyandanch
Crime
or whatever
bench.
it was, you could just look out the right side window, and we all sat on the right side of the train so we could see it.
That's dope.
But the guys, huddled around with money. and two chickens fighting, and it was the entire backyard was dedicated to this. Mm-hmm. It was fenced in. It was like really kind of like well appointed, so they could. And it was just like obvious. It was like nobody's calling this in. This has been going on for years.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was trying to say. Was it like the animal fighting thing really bothers me because they're not sentient enough to opt in or whatever. Like they don't know what they're doing. Sure. There's no reward for them. But like humans beating the shit out of each other where they're both opting in, it's like, all right, it's just not, it's not for me, but I don't think it shouldn't be. And I get why people are into it. Like I totally get it. But to me, I'm like, yeah, there's a difference between watching like two people fight behind the counter at a Burger King where someone's like bashes her in the head with like an aluminum pan or something like that that's holding fries and laughing. And everyone's pulling them apart. And then like someone just on top of another dude just bashing him in the face and he's bleeding everywhere and someone has to jump in to save him. It's not for me.
Like, I need context.
Yeah, exactly. It's the drama of the fight video that's so wonderful. Oh my God, this whole taco shop is erupted into fucking fistfights. This is awesome. By the way, Dag, I put in the chat here the video that we were talking about.
I didn't realize this clip the first time around. The guy behind him who's doing the alleying part, right? He like literally points up like he's calling the play before it actually happens. He's actually calling.
His name is Dr. Pepper. He actually followed me on Twitter for a little bit. I was actually very honored. But actually, a lot of these guys know me because I'm one of the biggest accounts that actually follow them. Sometimes they DM me and they're like, "Hey, yo, Gene, check it out. We got this new video up." I'm like, "Yo, I'll check it out."
Did you see it, Dave?
It's incredible. Yeah, it's exactly like you guys described it. I had to take it outside this engine, put it back on Chrome.
I don't know how these guys haven't been arrested, to be honest.
Dude, they have been arrested. Oh, okay. They have been arrested. Yeah.
How old is this?
One of them, Josh Mundy, he's actually facing a trial right now.
I mean, they should. Like, I'm not crazy about the vigilante stuff, but if you're going to film it, I'll watch it.
Yeah, that is true. That's.
I mean, like, I'm not gonna come in to your defense, but I'll watch your footage.
It's cool that you brought up MMA though, Colin, too, because it's like, again, it kind of goes back to my earlier point about how like all of this wrestling and like machismo fighting culture has been like politically so powerful because you think about the biggest voice in media right now, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was a UFC commentator. It's just so interesting that so many forces of modern day politics and media have come from strains of wrestling and fight culture.
Yeah, definitely.
It's something to look at, and it's part of like the dominance of masculinity, I guess, in our culture. That these people continue to rise to the top, and we listen to them. They command millions of voices. Joe Rogan right now has a bigger audience than he's ever had when he was just on UFC, which is crazy. That's crazy.
It is. I know he's isolated himself politically a little bit, but it seems like maybe it balanced out with who he drew in, with kind of anointing himself.
I mean, regardless, he's a lightning rod of politics. He is. That's the whole reason why Trump is on there, Elon is on there, and that's why there was a whole discourse about whether Kamala should have gone on.
I get worried about him because I genuinely like him and I genuinely admire his curiosity. And he seems like he brought a lot of people with him in his success, which I think he seems like a decent human being. But I just get worried about him that he jumps on bandwagons too quick. You know what I mean? Like maybe he gets a little too invested in something, and he's very passionate, and I think that's what it is with him. But that's what I worry about with him. Not that you have to worry about Joe Rogan. He's fine. He's a millionaire many times over. He's doing just fine. But I'm saying for him, I think he should be a little more careful with that.
He's just too open-minded. He's like way too willing to give the benefit of the doubt to like everything,
I think that's a good point. I think that's fair. That's fair.
I think that's what makes the show great.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's exactly why he has so many listeners, because he has that like almost absolute approach to it, And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand is that he's not a political podcast, Much in the same way we're not.
Right. That's not his area of expertise.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't get that, and that's why Kamala didn't go on Rogan, because like because liberals have like this hang up of going on a platform because that person has platformed other people before. So it's like, oh my God, I can't do that because all of a sudden the stink of Damon is going to get on me, and it's like, dude, you're way overthinking it. Just go on Joe Rogan, go on Theo Vaughn. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, Theo Vaughn's another one.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. You're a fucking war. You do war crimes. What the fuck are you talking about? You know, like you're fucking like you know you're worried about going on a podcast when you willingly spend millions of dollars to just kill people. Like what the fuck is going on here? This is the exact clash of morality, strange morality that Kojima talked about in Metal Gear. You know, it's like what is this like weird hypocritical culture of of morality? You know,
Well, it's funny. Like I consider Rogan specifically like a mixture of like Lex Friedman, someone like Chris Williamson or something.
Yeah.
And then do you know the guy? I've started watching him in the last year or so, Danny Jones. It's specifically catered towards like conspiracies and crazy shit.
Is he the English guy?
I'm sorry.
Is he the English guy?
No, he's not English. He's not English.
Okay.
No, not
No,
this
I don't
one.
know.
Chris Williamson is English, but like Joe Rogan's all these people wrapped up into one. Like when I watch a Danny Jones interview, it's like I'm like, there's a good reasonable chance this is insane, right? But so you go in knowing that. With Rogan, I feel like the agnostic nature of it forces you to drop all of your preconceptions about someone, or at least go in like, I don't even know who half these people are when I'm listening to this shit.
Me
and
either.
then sometimes you go and read about them afterwards if you're like, oh, that sounds reasonable or interesting. And then you're like, oh, this dude is like considered a conspiracy nut or whatever, and you kind of see through it, and maybe you're able to see it without preconceived notions, which I think is pretty interesting. What's funny, Gene?
Yeah, I'm just looking at because I heard of Danny Jones. I don't know if the listeners remember, but last year I dated a girl who was a Trump supporter from Alabama, doesn't believe in the moon landing, and has doubts about the Earth's flatness.
Oh no!
And she was a huge Danny Jones viewer. So we would just like hang out in bed, and she would just like play me all these videos, and like I'm just like being reminded of how ridiculous it was. Like here's this 2 months ago of this dude in like a Pope hat. Like this, he looks like he's on meth. Like he's got a Pope hat on. And then the title of the video is "Biblical Evidence Jesus Christ was tripping balls on the cross."
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the one I watched recently, Smithsonian Cover Up: The Lost Giants of Ancient America.
Yeah.
You know, like so it's like outrageous. But you know that. But what I like is that Rogan absorbs some of the outrageous. A really good example is Graham Hancock, if I'm being totally honest with you, which I know is controversial for some people. I really don't know why. I don't know what he's saying that is so controversial or out of control. But I knew him from Fingerprint of the Gods, and like he had a reputation, right, as being kind of like a pseudoscientist and a pseudo-archaeologist and all those kinds of things. That's cool if you interpret it like that. I don't mind. But it was listening to him on Rogan and not really knowing that that's who this person really was and not making a connection. And then I'm like, oh, that was really fun. That makes a lot of sense. What? And then I went and looked him up. I'm like, oh, it's the dude who was like wildly defamed and who I prejudged. And through the Rogan kind of car wash, he came through and we didn't really know. Like, that's what I like about Rogan. Like, I think
he does that for a lot of people.
Yeah, like I think it's, and sometimes it backfires and sometimes it doesn't work. And like, I like that about him. I like that he doesn't really know and that he's authentically and earnestly trying to figure things out. I think that's what makes the show so great. And I don't agree with many of the people that are on the show, and I don't agree with a lot of the things he says too, but it's like, that's part of the fun, in my opinion.
It's brave because he gives them the platform regardless.
Right.
And so, most of the times it does work out. Sometimes the person just stinks, can't carry on the conversation. But yeah, the majority of the time it does work out, oddly. And it's all due to that initial benefit of the doubt, I guess. Right. Yeah, Rogan's a great topic. I mean, that's a great topic that I don't think we've covered.
No,
on
that'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be a deep dive.
Yeah.
I mean, one of us has actually been on this goddamn show
twice.
So, that's
greedy.
Cool thing.
Yeah, it is cool. It was a cool experience.
Matty, what do you think? Have we done this?
I really thought my topic was going to be like 20 minutes. So yeah, good. I'm more than happy with what we got out of it.
Yeah, we talked a long time.
Yeah, I was
about
like,
wrestling.
I did not. I'm thrilled about it. I was just like,
That's how multifaceted. Like, I didn't think I would talk about it this much either. But like, that's how multifaceted and like multi-strained like wrestling is and fight culture is.
I did not expect this, but we really went around the horn from alley-oop slaps to suplexes, so I'm thrilled.
Here's another Gene Park lore story, and this is how I knew that fight culture has legs, and people are right to capitalize on fight culture. When I was a senior in high school, I did start a fight club with my friends, and we told all the freshman kids, "Hey, us seniors would think you'd be really cool if you fight each other." That's it. We just told them that,
Little
and they were like,
social
"Oh, you want us to
manipulation.
fight each other?" And it's
You
like,
were
"Yeah,
just
no,
a promoter.
we got the religion room booked. So like we will have all the desks around you, and you guys can just fight, and we'll watch, and we will judge how cool you are." And they were into it, and so we just let these kids fucking hit each other, and we would bet money. So you want to talk about buy-in? So we weren't ethically bad. We weren't using animals. We were using real humans.
Yeah, opting in.
And they
Yes,
agreed.
young children. Yes, but
The kids yearn for the ring.
But they would opt in, and we would just watch these fucking 14-year-old kids like just beat the shit out of each other, and it was great. Made a lot
How
of
long
money.
did this last? I need to.
It lasts for like the second half of the semester for senior year. So
Oh, pretty long.
this was when I started drinking and doing drugs too. So,
All
Little
lines
extra
up.
income, why not?
yeah, well, exactly. So that's why like we used to bring vodka to school, so we just get like fucking shit face and just watch these kids like fight each other. It was awesome.
I hope you created a tradition at that school. Like they passed it on when they were seniors then to the freshmen.
Actually,
and then-
apparently, I heard that we did. Yeah.
It's like a Skull and Bones style club.
Yeah, and yeah, this is a Catholic private school too. So yeah,
Perfect.
It's funny that you say this because I got home. My son's been going to the gym. I had to get a membership because he's a minor, but he's really into working out. So he's like that. So he's been really into it. So we got home the other day, and Helene and I are talking. She's like, "How's the gym?" And she's like, "Dagan, do you think he's ready for Fight Club?" But she meant, "Do you think he's ready to watch the movie?" But I'm thinking she's saying he's working out. Is he ready for a Fight Club?
yeah.
So I'm going back and forth for like 2 minutes being like, what are you talking about? He just started working out. I was like, what do you mean Fight Club? Like, and she's not getting what I'm saying, and I'm not getting what she's for 2 minutes straight. And then she was like, Dagan, the movie. And I'm like, oh shit.
No, you and Helene should tell your son, hey, look, as your parents, we think it'll be really cool if you started fighting other kids. Yeah.
Steal
We'll
their
give you
money.
money for it.
Yeah.
We'll give you money for it.
I love that
Pay
movie.
you. We'll give you a bigger allowance if you just start decking other kids, you know.
I will say this going out though, guys. I highly recommend the Darren Aronofsky movie, The Wrestler. Now, this is a work of fiction.
Oh, yes.
But if you want Mickey Rourke, right? You want a story about a reluctant retired wrestler and what he's kind of relegated to in his retirement and what it really is to be in the ring and, you know, the pressure to stay young and the fact of falling off so precipitously. And, you know, it gets into everything, the violence, the staple guns, the stitches, you know, all the behind the scenes shit of the glamour. And then this guy kind of fading into obscurity and almost like becoming, you know, I mean, becoming quite poor. You know what I mean? He was never taken care of. He was just kind of kicked to the curb. It's a great, again, a work of fiction, but a great kind of look inside of what these guys must go through to be, you know, definitely like a riches to rags story, if you will, you know, where, and in the end, he's like, he has nothing. You know, it's kind of a really neat glimpse behind the curtain of what I'm sure goes on or went on, you know, especially as these guys get old. And what's old? 40? You know, it's even worse than other professional sports because you need the physical, you know, the stamina and you know, youth, and you need to have, you know, you need to be built for that kind of shit. Can you imagine? I wouldn't last 10 seconds. You know, it's amazing. I gotta shout out to the guy, but that's a great movie and a great performance. And, you know, yeah, again, you know, Matty, I never knew I had so much to say about wrestling, but in thinking about it, it is kind of a compelling topic because it's been around since we were kids.
Yeah.
You know, and it was such a big part of pop culture. And still is, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not really paying attention. It's still out there.
It's more
I
difficult
wonder
for
what
them now
you said
because they
too.
got to navigate their characters to like social media. So you see guys like if they keep up the act online, then you're like, are they an asshole? Like that's I think the new form of like, is it real? Is like, are they actually a dick? I saw this one guy. Sorry, we're gonna drag this out just an extra minute, but there's a guy. Forgot his name, but he plays a heel character. He's not in WWE or anything. It's just like an amateur wrestler. Sorry. And the lengths he goes to be a complete dick to the audience is unbelievable given his amateur status to me. Like, he walks out, some kid's waving hi to him, and he's like, hey, and then screams in their face, and the kid immediately breaks down into tears. And he's just like, he kind of like points at him like, this fucking guy, and just walks off. And I'm like, and like the parents laughing because they're just like, they get it, right? There was another one where like a dude in the wheelchair was like trying to like high five him but couldn't lift his arm, and he was making fun of him. I was just like, is this guy just an asshole?
No way.
You know, I always wonder about that, where I'm just like, is this guy just getting really comfortable now? Because like, if I were to bring it to a pro level, MJF's one of my favorites, and he was making fun of someone in a wheelchair, and he like said like, watch this, and he just stood up, and the guy was, you know, was laughing, but it was like a really good back and forth. Like, you could tell the kid liked that, like MJF was treating him normally, like, you know, he was not afraid to make fun of those things. But you know, MJF does such a good job hiding his character that when he's genuine, you can't tell if that's who the real MJF is or if he's just like if he's pretending, you know. It's like he's just being nice for the cameras there.
Wow.
But yeah, the character work is so impressive nowadays, because when you do dive in, you know, you go to like The Rock's Instagram, like he's playing the final boss in WWE. He's like this fucking, you got to pass through me, like on a corporate level to get any opportunity here. So it's a cool character. But then you'll see him like on his Instagram, like, hey, find your anchor today, everybody. You know, you got to work out, eat good. This is my bulking tips. Like, just a totally nice dude, at least on camera, right? So that's the trick nowadays, is you got to like get through that second layer of online, just your online presence, because you need one to grow. But if you like commit to the bit and people just don't like you, then you're just an asshole.
Wow.
You know,
social
risky
media,
business.
you're right. You have to be in character 24/7.
Yeah. And does that
Right?
become the real you?
Interesting.
Yeah, I get that a lot when people meet me and they're like, "Oh yeah, you really seem consistent with how you are online." I'm like, "Yeah, that's I don't want to be different people. That's exhausting, you know."
Too much energy.
For
to
me,
keep
with
up.
Eugene,
Yeah.
it's the height. There's no way to tell you're as tall as you are. I mean, I guess that's the thing with everybody, but that's the one thing surprising me about meeting you in person for the first time. I was like, wow, he's tall.
You're just like my Tinder girls. They always say that too.
You don't give short guy energy. I don't know, bro. I feel like I could tell immediately Gene Parker's a tall guy.
I'm excited
You
to
can
meet
tell
you because
by
I heard
looking-
you're fucking tall too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I get
that'd be
that a
cool.
lot. I give short guy energy, I think, because everyone's always surprised when I'm tall. Always. Yeah. So
Yeah, I wonder if that's everybody. You know, I don't know. I'm the only not tall guy here, so I don't know.
Really?
Maybe people know I'm a midget by looking at me on the camera. I don't know.
I don't-
That's not.
I don't think you're-
very nice to say midget.
how tall are you? I thought
Little
you were.
person.
Thought you were a good
5'9".
height, Dig. What are you
5'9",
All right,
something
that's
like
good height. I don't think
That's
that's
average.
You think?
Yeah, it's average.
Yeah.
It's like
That's
dead
good height.
average,
It's
right?
not short.
Yeah.
Not short.
Just shorter than me and Colin and Matty.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Dude,
Just
I was
tall enough to be taller than most girls. That sounds sexist, but you know what I mean? You don't really want to be a lot of guys. I would think
it's
I would
tough
feel
out there
funny
for
if-
short dudes, man.
Yeah, it's tough being a
It's
short king
tough.
for sure.
Which I think is so unfair. Like I don't know. It's
It makes no sense.
yeah, it's a bummer. Like I never realized how much privilege you have as a man just not being short.
Yeah.
Like being 6 feet tall that's like that bare minimum it seems like women want. So I'm like, I just made it. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah, I think you're
You're below
right.
that line.
There's a stigma. It's a
Stig
stigma.
is already married. Whatever.
Yeah,
dude.
he doesn't
Yeah,
care.
I'm fine.
Hey, you're good,
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah, but I always feel bad. Like I was, our dad brings it up a lot because it was like a big thing for me when I was in high school. It's like I was short and I got tall late, like really late, where like I was like, I'm never gonna fucking grow, and it was like stressing me out. You know,
No, I grew up quick. Like I remember I had a growth spurt in like the 5th grade. Like people just suddenly noticed. Like one day I was like, "Gene, you're really tall now." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess so." Just happened.
That's good if you could do it that way, because Kyle, you probably went through that era where the girls were getting tall fast.
Oh yeah,
And then they were kind of going past you. Right. So that's another thing that makes you nervous again, because that's social stigma.
yeah.
We
I
don't-
didn't
we
mind
don't-
that. They could be bigger than me. That was okay.
Yeah,
You're like a little Amazon.
yeah. My high school prom date was way taller than me. Loved it. She's an FBI agent now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Investigating your
Cool.
school crimes, I imagine. You know,
Oh yeah.
checking into
The
the
Fight
Fight
Clubs.
Club and drugs dealt.
Yeah.
Like Dagan Rampa.
Tall FBI. I'm just going to do a little spin off. So I'm going to insert myself. In the middle here. Cause I think I definitely want to end with Gene's topic because I think it's super fun. But the FBI thing gave me a flashback. I dated this girl in high school who went to Sacred Heart, which is like one of the prestigious all girls Catholic schools on Long Island. Okay. Had nothing
we had a Sacred Heart in Guam too. That's
what was that called?
It was called Sacred Heart.
Oh, it was called Sacred Heart.
Yeah, Sacred Heart's Academy. Yeah.
People shuttled from all over Long Island to go to this school, right? It was very prestigious. She get her high school graduation. Usually they had pretty big who's giving the commencement speeches, but for some reason it was just like a random FBI agent woman who gave the commencement speech. Not that that's bad, but usually it was some kind of somebody with fame, but for some reason that's who it was for her class, which I think she was class of 93. This woman came in and her speech was about it. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. It was about using your femininity and your feminine wiles to get your way. That was the whole sort of essence of the speech. And to this, I thought it was weird as an 18-year-old kid. And I still think it's weird that was the gist and the thrust of that speech. Is that weird for you guys?
Yeah.
Is that a strange thing to give a commencement speech?
Yeah, I think so.
It's really weird. And talking about getting your way in life, getting your way with, you're building a family, getting your way in your career, like that was the whole point of what she was saying. And I still think it's and nobody batted an eyelash. You know what I mean? Like the kids, the teachers, the parents. It was really a strange. Anyway, I don't know. I just thought I'd put that out there. I don't think I've ever talked about it before. It was very strange. Now, I'll tell you this for a funny follow-up to our sister Allie's commencement speech at FIT in New York, Bill Cosby, before he was disgraced.
Mid rape, but pre-knowledge of rape.
Oh, no.
That's the worst part when you think about it.
That's the worst part.
Yeah.
Because all that stuff had already existed and went down.
What a fucking shithead, dude.
Wow.
He ruined everyone around him. Like that. Can you imagine how valuable the Cosby Show was going to be in syndication and like the bidding wars that would have happened to get that show on streaming services and shit like that, and then the amount of money that people would have made off of it, like everyone involved. And
this was the guy.
He fucked it all up. It's like it's crazy.
It's insane to fuck with your legacy like that and just be such a abhorrent human being. But he was the guy riding the soapbox to rappers to not use the N-word in their music. That was it. Meanwhile, he's committing these heinous
shit. Going all the way back to when he was on, what was that show? I Spy or whatever? Was that the show?
Yeah, that's right.
Like it goes all the way back to the 60s.
Insane. Yeah. But good commencement.
Good commencement speaker. Yeah, sure.
Oh, no. It was probably pretty cool at the time because you're thinking Heathcliff Huxtable. You're not thinking.
Oh, no, right? Totally, dude. I couldn't believe that he was there. It was like, whoa,
Pretty cool. But didn't age well. My friends. All right. My topic, as you guys know, little shifting gears here, but I want to talk about with you guys. Was there a time in your life when you had a plan that backfired? When your plans go sideways, either when you're a kid, something you were kind of conspiring to do as a kid, maybe a little scheme you were trying to hatch as a little one, or something in your adult life when you had a plan and it just went awry, right? And I'll tell you why it came up for me. And this is actually a funny story. Maybe you guys heard about it. There's a guy on Long Island named Robert Ehrlich, and he's the founder of a very popular snack company called Robert's Gourmet, which everybody knows the snack Pirate's Booty, right? This is the guy who invented Pirate's Booty.
Yar.
And I mean, Pirate's Booty's been around for decades now, super popular, and kind of a point of pride for Long Islanders because it's invented and still made on Long Island. The headquarters is still on Long Island in a little village in Nassau County on the North Shore called Seacliff. Well, this aging millionaire snack food inventor, I guess it was less than 2 weeks ago, decided that he was going to be the mayor of this little town, square mile town called Seacliff on Long Island. and that he was basically the mayor now. He basically all but declared himself this mayor now, citing this ancient law that apparently he misunderstood and doesn't actually apply to anything. He's not the mayor. In fact, the mayor of Sequel is like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. Like, I'm the mayor of Sequel. So this little town of 5,000 people is like reeling because they're like, this guy is trying to basically take the mayorship by force, right? And it's hilarious. And the fact that it's Robert is hilarious. And I know him a little bit, and here's why. So Helene tells me about the story. He's like, did you hear about this guy? She knows my affiliation with Pirates Booty, and I'll explain. And she's like, did you hear about this whole thing? I said, no. And that's what sort of regenerated this whole memory for me. So in 2000, it had to be 2001. So this was late 2001, not that long after 9/11. Okay. Let me explain. 2000, for those who don't remember, and you guys are all younger than me. We were sort of experiencing this sort of boom period in my thing called the .com boom, where all the companies now had to have websites with the advent of the popularity of the internet. And for animators and designers and illustrators, it created a lot of work because now there was a whole nother facet of stuff to do things for, whether that was for a corporate website or whether for that, that was for an entertainment thing like Newgrounds. Like there was a whole nother area to do work for, whether that was design or web design or animation or illustration, whatever you did. Everybody needed people. It was like a real boom period for us. And so outside of TV and outside of film, we had all this web stuff to do. It was awesome. And when 9/11 happened, it sort of quickly ushered in the .com bust. So this period lasted like 2 to 3 years. And then 9/11, especially on the coasts, ushered in this whole period of like, it went from feast to famine in like no frames, right? So all of a sudden the work dried up. And I remember now I was home for Christmas on Long Island at my dad's, and I didn't have a job. Everybody got laid off. I don't even know exactly where I was working at the time, but all the work shriveled up, no matter who you were, and everybody was out of work. So I was scrambling around for work, and it's funny, like, when you're young and you just feel like it's the end of the world. I look back now, I probably could have easily survived on like $1,000 a month, right? But at the time, you're not thinking like, I'm 25 years old, it's going to be okay. Perspective is always great. Hindsight is always 20/20. But, then you feel like it's the end of the world, right? So I'm like scrambling around, wondering what I'm going to do. I probably have I don't even have rent because I'm living at my grandma's, right? And I probably had a car payment and a couple of other things. Like I could have subsisted on next to nothing. But I thought it was, this emergency situation, and I was weeks out of work, and I was wondering what I was going to do. There was no animation jobs to be had anywhere. Everything was just kind of like, it was like tumbleweeds. So I see a friend of mine texts me, and that was, the early flip phone days. And he's like, yo, dude. And he was a guy I used to work with at another studio, and he had gone from Manhattan back to Long Island, where he was from, to work for this Robert's Gourmet Company, which I knew as a web designer, but he got another job and was leaving. It was like, hey, they need a web designer here. I'm stepping down. Do you want to fill my spot? And I was like, oh, cool. He's like, well, if you accept the job, I already told him about you. You just got to shoot into Seacliff and meet with the guys and, have you a little interview, whatever. And I was like, all right, cool. So I remember Christmas came and went, and I was hopeful because I had I had this light at the end of the tunnel, this prospective job interview. And I go in and I meet with them. And needless to say, I don't know anything about designing a website. Like I don't know anything but to draw and animate stuff. That's the extent of my technical knowledge. I don't know word one of designing a website. But I go in there, and long story short, I say I could do all this stuff. And they kind of make the job sound pretty appealing. Like, oh, maybe in a perfect world, it'll be 50% design and 50% just keeping the web design post, up to date. And, you'll go with, whatever we were using at the time, Flash and Dreamweaver or whatever kind of primitive shit we were using back then. I didn't know any of this stuff. So they were like, so it won't just be the technical end. It won't just be the web design. You'll be illustrating and updating our artwork and working on some new designs for the packaging and for the site, but maybe a little bit of animation. But you're definitely going to have to, your primary duties are going to be to keep the website updated, plug and play, change prices. We have an online store. You're going to be in charge of all that. Yeah. That's great. That's what I do, that type of thing. So I'm thinking fake it till you make it. You know what I mean? Where everybody always tells me that whole thing, fake it till you make it, which I had always heard, but I had never really had to try. So I'm just thinking, all right, I'll shoot over to Barnes and Noble. I'll get a book about Dreamweaver. How hard can this be? So I did all that. Sort of just crunch numbers, read the book without ever opening the program. Just really a bad idea, right? Go in there on the first day. Now I'm thinking this is great because their packaging, which is still the same, ironically, has, depending on which snack food you're talking about, has different animated, illustrated, cartoon characters on each one. And I always thought they were abysmal and needed to be updated. And I was like, I'll do kind of the cool Cartoon Network version of their characters. I'll modernize it. It's really important to say they weren't asking for any of this. This was my idea. I'll go in there, I'll redesign the characters, things they had no interest in whatsoever. In fact, the packaging is still the same 20 something years later. So I'm just thinking I have all these high hopes for how I'm going to skew this job and bend it to my will. And they have their needs. I lie. I get in on the first day. I remember the end of the first day with the art director was already giving me the thin eye. Like, what the fuck is this guy doing? He was already on to me. And I knew. Because I spent the whole day like resketching the main pirate character. Oh, look how cool we could do this. It looks more like Powerpuff Girls, that not interested at all. And he's like, oh, what'd you do with the website? And I remember like being in there with the, the primitive web programs at the time. Like it was all Greek to me. I was, and knowing in my heart of hearts, like I was in trouble. Like I didn't know. I was way out of my league with the tech stuff. Second day comes around. The guy's already kind of, you could tell the guy's already, he already knows that I lied about my technical knowledge with the web design. So get to the end of the second day. Art director comes over with my pay stub in his hand.
Oh my God.
He's like, dude, he didn't, there was no preamble. It was, he was very curt about it. He was like, obviously, this job is not for you. I think he tried to be diplomatic, but in no uncertain terms, he was just like, here's your 2 days of pay. We're going to have to part ways. And I got fired from Pirates Booty in less than 48 hours. They called me on my bluff. And I remember being so crestfallen, just walking. I didn't fight it. I copped to it. What are you going to do? I mean, I get, obviously I don't know what I'm doing. Obviously it was a little less design and a little more web design than they said too, but it was really my fault. Right. So I boycotted Pirates Booty for like the next 15 years, even though I fucking love Pirates Booty. I love it. And it wasn't until my kids got old enough to discover Pirates Booty and they loved it and they like wanted it in their lunchbox that I had to relent. Then I had to tell everybody, Dad, why do you hate Pirates Booty? And for years had to say, oh, this is why I hate Pirates Booty. And
because I wasted 2 days of their time once in 2001.
And it's amazing, dude. Because the guy, Robert, the head of this whole thing, he still looks the same. I mean, he looks older. He gained weight, but he still looks the same. He's obviously, like pulling a Kanye, like he's mentally unraveling in public and nobody's helping him, the type of thing, which is kind of sad. But
that rules that he's like he tried to like seize control of a municipality. It's pretty hardcore.
It looks like Seacliff is kind of like the Western Long Island version, the Nassau County version of Colin and I grew up out east on Long Island in Suffolk County. It's kind of like the Nassau County version of Bellport. It's like this beautiful little village, like incorporated village, not that many people. Nobody knows what it is. And this guy just thinks this guy just basically claiming it, which is a hilarious part of the story. Cause I don't know if I would even have thought of my story if this wasn't in the offing right now. It's all over Long Island news. Like this guy's trying to take over a town. It's like a non-violent takeover. So it's really interesting.
Very Machiavellian.
Exert his will. He's like, but clearly I'm the most important person in this town, which it probably is.
Yeah, he probably is.
But, and he's using that to justify it, which I think is hilarious because there's the most important person in every town. So couldn't everybody in every town do? Like, Kyle, you might be the most important person in your town.
I doubt it. I doubt
Right?
that highly.
That's a pretty big place.
Yeah, I don't think
You might have a shot though.
I don't know. I don't.
If you want to take it over, all I'm saying is you try it.
Seize control. Seize control of Moseley, Virginia.
So that's and you know what, guys? I will tell you, that was my first fake it till you make it, and it flopped. But that hasn't stopped me from doing it again, and it's never flopped again. Now, maybe I'm just lucky. Done it. I did it last year with a thing. And, you know, it's just like when you're desperate, you got to rally the troops and just do what you got to do. But anyway, I
feel like you could have learned Dreamweaver quickly. Like, I don't know what.
I just couldn't understand it.
Like, yeah, that's just so.
And it wasn't If I'm not, people will correct us if I'm wrong about this, but to my knowledge, Dreamweaver was like, what was the other thing with the other programming language, however complicated it was? Dreamweaver was like the graphical, simplistic answer where there was like a graphical interface to it and it was supposed to be much more intuitive. So you would think maybe I could have handled it in, you know, comparison to something like whatever. What's the other thing? C++ or whatever that was.
Yeah, well, like there were people were building like I only know this because I really loved web design in the mid 90s. Like when I first got online, was websites like AngelFire were building like shells that were like Dreamweaver like shells over HTML text, which is the entire idea of these different programs, to where like you could just drag things around and select things, or you can go like under the hood and start manually messing with the HTML.
You could do it either way.
Right. And when I made my first websites back in the day and worked for websites back in the day, we would actually just write everything by hand in text documents in HTML, copy and paste them to .html documents, and then upload them through an FTP file to the back end of that's like how you literally updated websites back in the day. It was fucking crazy. So I can see that being like a little more complicated for you, but it's almost like I wish I don't remember you going through this like in the time period, and I might have actually been able to help you.
Yeah. How old would you have been?
I would have been a senior. If that was 2001 and 2002, I would have been a senior in high school. Like,
yeah,
I would have been able to help you at that point, which is interesting because that was probably at the height of my own web design or website building powers, you know, because that's when CMSs and stuff started coming in. You would never interact with websites like that again. It was a very brief period of time. We always talk about those brief periods of time in online culture.
Oh my God.
But that was a very brief period of time where like you were expected to kind of be able to really know what you were doing.
You're all right though. I mean, it was opposite side of the brain to how I operate, but it was probably honestly as drag and drop as it possibly could have been. Like there was no way. I just think there's an inherent stubbornness. Like I don't want to learn it. You know what I mean? Like I'm here to draw characters. You know, that's what I was thinking. And I was still young and stubborn. I didn't have a family yet. Helene and I weren't even married yet. We might not even been engaged at that point. I don't remember. You know what I mean? What's funny about the memory is how panicky I was about not having a job. It's like, dude, I could have subsisted for months without doing anything. Couldn't I just relax?
No, I get that. If I didn't have a job, I would freak out.
You know?
Sure.
But you look back and it's like, wow. You know,
that would stress me the fuck out. I don't blame you. It doesn't matter how much money I had either. I would be, if I didn't have an employment, I would be stressed. So I think your reaction to take what's there, I don't think you're wrong for that. I just think you were in over your head. You know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I throw myself in over my head. And again, I've answered that like maybe one, maybe two times since then where it's gone much better. But, you know, having to do it takes courage and audacity, but it was it failed. That was a huge flop. And it was one of those things where it was like I really liked the product and I just couldn't bring myself to I had to have my own little internal personal one-man rebellion against it. You know, I'm sure I didn't make a dent, obviously, in this multi-million-dollar company. That's only gotten bigger. I mean, it's huge. And it was huge at the time as well.
I wouldn't say the first time, but I feel like it was the first time I was conscious of consuming Little Pirates booty. And I got to say that it was really good. I was very impressed. I was like, well, this is going to be part of the wheelhouse. But I didn't know, Dagan, you were capable of holding a grudge for so long. Just such a nice guy. But, you know, this 2-day blunder of yours led to 15 years of of staying away from a snack food. I'm so surprised.
And even my kids for a little while, it was pretty ugly. And it wasn't even their fault. That was the worst part. It was like completely my fault.
Well, this is the problem I have with this story, though, is that like you described it as a boycott. But
Yeah.
I could understand it from the perspective of saying like, oh, this is a bad memory for me. It's a painful memory. I just don't want to be around this product. But you're like boycotting it because you lied to them?
It doesn't make any sense.
I don't know about
It
that.
makes
I don't
no
know. Yeah, I
sense.
don't know about that.
And depriving myself of an absolutely delicious snack food.
And your kids now.
And my kids for a little while. Like, Daddy, why can't we have Pirates Booty? It's like, no Pirates Booty.
It's not
That's
good for
funny.
you.
Yeah, I forgot about that story.
Kyle, I'll go to you next, actually.
Okay.
Do you have this sort of thing, this experience in your life where you had a plan that just backfired, just blew up in your face? Didn't go your way?
It's funny. I know people enjoy like the little insights into the company. Like I read that a lot. So I have two to come to mind that are not like yours, like personal blunders, but things that have happened recently with the company that didn't go the way I thought they were going to go. And how plans and perceptions backfired in some sense. So the first is, what order I want, what would be the best order? Let me think about what I want to take these in. Yeah, I guess. So the first is the RSS feed situation, which I wrote a couple of letters about to the audience. And if you don't read Patreon or you're not on Patreon, you wouldn't know anything about this. But basically, and I know a lot of people know this already, but to the spirit of the topic, Patreon for many years had a single unified RSS feed. For companies like us, RSS is really simple syndication, and it's a way, amongst other things, to absorb podcasts from something into your own podcast app. So you can have like a unified thing where like all these different things are pulled into whatever app you use, and that's RSS. And it's really important to a lot of people. It's important to me. I use RSS for podcasts, so I totally get it. So for many years, people complained because there was no option for us to do different feeds for the show. So you had to have one RSS feed and it would constantly update. But if you only listen to like Sacred Symbols and Defining Duke, but you didn't listen to Constellation and whatever Summon Sign, then you would still have to absorb these shows, and it pissed people off. And I know over time we lost customers, and hundreds of people we didn't lose hundreds of people necessarily, we might have, but hundreds of people gave us private feedback, DMs and stuff being like, can we do something about the RSS feed? So I'm ignorant of a lot of things of running a business. A lot of it is by gut. I think that we all kind of understand that in some sense. Like there is no roadmap. You just kind of make choices. And it's a series of choices. Mm-hmm. And before I even lived in Virginia, so 2018, 2019, when we launched Knockback, so we had Fireside Chats, Knockback, and then Sacred Symbols, and things were starting to rotate. And that's when people started to say, like, can I get out of this? I don't want to listen to Fireside Chats, or I don't want to listen to Knockback, or whatever, or I don't want to listen to Sacred Symbols. And I received that feedback so many times that I just internalized it. And people would still complain constantly about it. But it was like, I wasn't even absorbing it anymore. I'm like, something has to be done about this. And immediately started begging Patreon to make this change. Now, big Patreon, and I think people know this because we talk about it over time, big Patreons are treated a little differently. And old Patreons are treated a little differently, where people that were with them from the very beginning, where we're grandfathered in sometimes to different rates. And we also are given access and proximity to like new features and updates, and have dedicated, once you reach a certain size, instead of like just reaching out to general support or general help, you have a liaison basically between you and the company. You can email them about anything. And they're really wonderful. And I've had 3 of them over time. And
sounds like how YouTube should be. Honestly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, there's just no, YouTube remains the way it is by choice. And because I think they think the mystification of it all makes them more money. That's my theory. It's like, they don't want to know. They don't want to know. They don't want to know what you're doing. They just want you to upload as many minutes of video as possible. Let them monetize it. No problems. So you have a certain amount of capital, working capital with people that you work with, right? And so we would have meetings with these people. I would go to dinner with them sometimes when I lived in Santa Monica. And you would talk about the business and how things are going. And I would always be like, we need separate RSS feeds. We need it. 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. Come 2025, they email me. And they're like, we think we have this figured out. And without even thinking about it, I was like, yeah, let's go. you know? And this ended up being a huge mistake. One of the biggest unforced errors I've ever made as a business owner. And a lot of people think it's like mountain out of a molehill, but it's really not. It's the entire function of providing the core product to the consumer, like the conduit. So it would be like saying you owned a supermarket and the register's not working. Didn't matter. That's just a trivial problem. You know, oh, we lost Matty. Sorry, we had an interruption there. Matty's camera went out. So we're back. What was I saying? I don't even remember what I was saying at this point.
It's cash registers being.
Oh, yeah. Like, oh, yeah. So people
yeah.
like this RSS feed issue would be, it's like, it's a mountain out of a molehill and people, you know, and I'm like, no, it's like actually a really fundamental problem. And what ended up happening was we deployed these separated RSS feeds for all the different shows. And I was like, victory. Like, in fact, it was right after the Shuhei interview went up and I was like, this is a great week. You know, like what a fucking good week. And lo and behold, we made and this is where internalizing it and not really considering any other angles after a while, because you just get bombarded with feedback, not seeing the other side of it. I never even considered what should have been blatantly obvious. And it's maybe a reason why democratizing decision-making is sometimes a better idea than being like monarchical with it. Is I was like, oh, doing this breaks the status quo. And in my mind, it's like, yeah, it breaks the status quo. You guys have been complaining about the status quo for years and years. And it's like, there are like 13,000 people here and thousands of them like it the way it is. And now that option's gone. And this is part of doing an alpha, as I explained to the audience in my letter, is like you have an idea and then you deploy it into the wild and you learn about what it's not only about testing if it works, it's about the things that you didn't see. It's why people proofread books, why editors their entire proofreading apparatuses in big publishers to make sure nothing gets by the goalie. And I just didn't consider that was going to be a problem, but it was a huge problem. And I had in my mind this entire idea of it being this triumphant, like, yes, I've solved. I was like, yes, I've solved this major problem. Like I gave the audience what it wanted. And then I was like, oh, the audience that liked it the way it was would never complain about it or just tell you that. They're just used to the status quo and they want to listen to everything. Now, my reasoning was led by data. The reality is that not everyone listens to everything. Most people do not listen to everything. Most people listen to only one or two things actually, and are only here for this or that or the other thing. And then there's a group of people that do listen to many shows.
That's interesting.
So, and that makes sense. It's so much content. And it was never, that's why I never raised prices, because the idea is that there should be something for you in here. Like just defining Duke is really worth $5, in my opinion, a month. So if you get like something else for it, right? Or sacred symbols or whatever it is, it should be value rich. The part of that is saying like, I don't think all of this is for you. It's got to be some of it and not others. It's like a TV channel, right?
Yeah.
But some people really do love it. Some people would put on Cartoon Network and watch it all day. And some people listen to Less Than Media, every piece of content we do. And that's cool. Like, but it was kind of predicated on this idea that I was making the right choice. And though it seems trivial and weird, especially to people that don't use RSS or whatever, or were uninterrupted, and the many people that liked the change, which there no doubt there was a huge thing, it cost us, like, like we lost customers, we annoyed people, all the things you don't want to do to your and that was learning. That was like a lesson that you have to like reassess and like think about. Like I just got caught in a lane where it became almost a joke that I was asking for it when we would talk. Like when we'd get a new liaison and she would be like, oh, I see here in your notes, like a big ask is separate RSS feeds. Like it's a thing that like they knew. And I never considered any other aspect about the way it would break the status quo. And so that's one thing recently that didn't go my way, work related. And then the other thing is just, and I talked about this on the last episode of Sacred Symbols, is like, I think my laissez-faire attitude towards building a community, like a cogent place for people, like above and beyond just listening to the content and being linked by the content, but rather interacting with each other, interacting with the content, interacting with us. I feel like my laissez-faire attitude towards it has failed. And the reason I feel that way, and I didn't really articulate this on Sacred, but over the last year or so, I've noticed I can't help but notice that the people in my orbit, like my staff and those around me, are all being affected by the negativity online, or many of them, and us, because it's me too, are being affected by it in different ways. I've had conversations with Matty about it. I've had conversations with Chris about it. I've had conversations with Dustin, with Gene, with, of course, my wife, etc. And each of those people has been affected by it in different ways. And
Jaffe too.
And of course, Jaffe is a
Jaffe,
major. Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It's like Jaffe, of course, maybe the biggest one of all. Like I say many times, I don't care how incendiary Jaffe is off platform. I don't care if you like him or not. That's totally up to you. I care about the way you treat someone in my space. And
Sure.
there's a conflation between freedom of speech and expression, which I believe in, and the idea that you're allowed to say and do whatever you want at any time in any venue, which is not what freedom of speech and expression is. I'm not the government, so I can't infringe on your freedom of speech. It's literally not possible for me to do it. There's nothing I can do to you that infringes and impugns, a freedom of speech for you. So I've realized, like, I have to be more aggressive. And this is another thing where I had to learn this lesson over years. As I expressed on Sacred, we get messages fairly often of people being like, what the fuck is going on around here with this person, or what this person's saying, or this way this person's treating someone. And I'm like, I don't really know what to do. Like, do I ban a customer who's out of pocket? Do I protect the host no matter what, even if I think they're wrong? People always bring up Chris and like politics and how some people think he has like Trump derangement syndrome or whatever. And just the way and it's like, whatever you think about him, I love Chris, and you should have the respect for me and for us that at least in our space, you would show him a little bit of decorum, like walking into a person's house or place of business, and you could say what you want outside of the walls. I'm not trying to even control that. I don't care.
Right.
And I'm bummed that basically the premise of it is that late last year, I noticed that everyone was upset, and I felt like I was failing in some way to do something about it. And the original idea was to say, we'll do a code of conduct, and like, you're just going to have to opt in on this thing if you want to be around here. And I wrote it immediately. And that's what I was telling the audience, is like, people have been like, where's the code of conduct? I'm like, I wrote it in the first week of January. It's been sitting in my Google Docs. I'm not going to release it because what I realized was that it caters to the lowest common denominator, and I refuse to do it anymore. I refuse to simply do that anymore. Like, we don't have to do it.
I get that.
You know what I mean? We're not a major business. I'm not trying to spread the field and flood the zone with my product. I can do without the money of the people that can't speak like human beings to me and to my staff. I can do without it.
Yep.
And I realized, because at the very beginning of the document that I wrote, it said I shouldn't have to say any of this. And I wrote that. That's the way it was going to be at the beginning. And then I realized you shouldn't. So just don't. Instead, society's always catered towards people that need to be told things, but actually the vast majority of people don't need to be governed. They don't need to be told not to drive, to drive drunk. They don't need to be told not to murder someone. They don't need to be told not to put their hands on someone. We make rules to confine the degeneracy around
the minority. Yeah.
And maybe that's the way you have to run a society, of course. But you don't have to run your private business that way. And so what I realized, like, I've been more proactive in just banning people from our Reddit that spout off at the mouth, not only on our Reddit, but on other places too, to build a wall, a moat, if you will. I've been reading a lot about castles lately. And say, like, you know what? I simply don't want the business of people that I even have to ask to treat me with respect. If I have to ask you to like, I don't care if you disagree with me. People disagree with me all the time. We have a deeply diverse group of people working at this company. I will put in terms of ideological diversity, I will put Last Stand Media against any entity in video games. And I want you to show me the one that's more ideologically diverse. Seriously, anything. A publisher, a developer, another media outlet, a YouTube channel, a podcast network, anything.
That's pretty cool.
So it's true. It's totally true. And I'm proud of it. I'm deeply proud of it. But so it's not about disagreement. It's about, can you just talk about your disagreements like a fucking person? And so I'm really sad that I was wrong on this account and that I let it. It's my fault in some sense that, at least partially, that people are upset with the way that they're treated. It hurt my feelings when Jaffe came to me, and I've never talked about this, but was like, kind of, Jaffe's a pretty stoic, funny person, but was somewhat upset about, like, am I really costing you money? Do people really hate me to this? Like, I don't know where we stand. And I'm like, how can you think that I would do a friend of mine like that?
Right.
Some of my friends don't like some of my other friends. It's cool. But I'm going to treat everyone in my orbit that works for me and all of that. I need to be more protective of their own feelings and make a more hospitable place for them. And it requires more proactivity. And my laissez-faire, like, things will pan out kind of attitude, let it fester, and it was wrong. And so that didn't go the way I thought it was going to go.
Kyle, let me go back for 1 second, just because I honestly don't know. Had you decided to initiate that policy, would that have been a sweeping thing for all social media surrounding LSM?
No, like I don't want to. And this is what I was saying is, like, I just don't want you in my own house saying this shit.
Yeah.
I can't control what you do anywhere else, and I don't want to. I don't care. I'm not going to copyright strike your videos about me. I'm not going to, like, report you on X for calling me names. Like, I don't do that kind of stuff. I don't even block people for that are constantly attacking me on social media.
No, you're very
I just feel like we have to at least control the parameter, like our own border.
Yeah.
And say, like, at least in these spaces, you're going to show people respect, each other and us. And you're going to speak like human beings to each other. And if you can't do that, you won't be here. And that we're not desperate enough for your money and your time and your engagement to put up with it anymore.
Yeah, I get it.
And that's what it goes back to with the code of conduct, where I was like, this is so patronizing and unnecessary to almost everyone in the audience. I'm doing it so that it trickles down to the lowest common denominator. It's fucking crazy that I have to do this. So normal Joe Schmo that listens to the content gets a code of conduct popped up and he's like, what the fuck is that? Like,
right.
Meanwhile, it's not even aimed at him or 99.9% of the other people. And I realized, like, yeah, this whole instinct of, like, saying, like, we have to have a policy. Like, no, we don't. The policy should just be fucking normal. That's
I don't think you made a mistake. I just think it was a journey. I don't think that realization would have dawned on you unless you went through that whole trip. You know what I mean? Like, unless you went from point A to point B and thought about it and went through the motions and stuff. That's why you came to a conclusion. But again, it had to be, it was a journey. It wasn't a knee jerk reaction. So I don't think you did anything wrong. I think you arrived in the right spot. Who cares? You know what I mean? Sometimes it's not a mistake. Like,
to me, I just feel like I don't want. It's weird to me that you being a fan or a customer, or a user, whatever, a listener, is contingent on you having the permission to disrespect me and my staff. There's literally nothing about disagreeing that I mind. Anyone who, I don't understand how anyone can even get that like that.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Seems easy.
It's a cop out, bro. I mean, I have obviously a million thoughts on this for how long I've done it, but I just want to throw it in there. It's a complete cop out. So anyway, disagreement is just such an easy argument to defer to.
Sure.
It's like, oh, he just doesn't like that. I agree with him, or I don't agree with him. That's why he muted me. It's like, no, 10 out of 10 times no.
No, right. Like I actually, I mean, anyone who knows me knows that I quite like disagreement in terms of, like, intellectual and academic arguments about issues, and I actually quite like it.
You like debate,
right? I think it's awesome. So, like, I've never shied away from it. I just feel like conflating the two. Yeah, you're right, Matty. That's a great way of putting it. It is a cop out, and we simply don't have to put up with it anymore, and it will allow the normalcy in the environment to flourish more, which is most people. Like, it's almost, that's again why I didn't want to deploy this code of conduct. It's almost everyone. Like, this is why for most people listening to this, for almost everyone listening to this, they're like, yeah, like what's the problem with that? But there are some people that are going to be like, that don't want to be fans or whatever anymore. And it's like, well, maybe this relationship never really was quite what I had assumed with you then. Because I would never speak to people that I cared about or enjoyed like this. And I think that people don't think sometimes about the people on the other side. And the greatest cop-out of all, speaking of cop-outs, and I'll go to you, Matty, on this, is like, the greatest cop-out of all is like, you shouldn't care. Right? And it's like,
I thought you were going to say they probably won't see it anyway. That was the right. I always
well,
think.
Yeah, it's like, well, there's that too. I mean, I can't imagine what I don't see. I mean, there's like, I'm fucking most of it. I assume. But it's like, the idea that you shouldn't care is very antiquated and weird, considering what the internet has become and what it is, and the role it plays in all of our lives. And it's not to say you should get hung up on this stuff and let it ruin your day or whatever. It's just to say that it's actually, it does hurt people. There are people on the other end. And I simply expect to be spoken to in my house the way I would speak to you. And you don't hear me spouting off like, and going crazy on people and being derogatory and all that. I mean, that's not what we do. Mm-hmm. I don't see how that can be interpreted. But the biggest thing that I feel bad about is not for me, but for the people, because it does get sad. It's like, at some point you get kind of used to it. It used to hurt way more.
Yeah. 10
years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago, it used to hurt way more. You eventually become kind of more immune to it, but it always hurts a little bit, at least for me.
Sure.
But the thing I feel bad about the most is that I let it fester enough to hurt people around me. Mm-hmm. That like that policy had splash damage, and I'm bummed about it. So yeah, that's another thing that didn't go right for me. And those are two pieces of insight into what's been going on with the business lately. Mm. And I know people enjoy those little things. So that's where my mind is.
I would start off by saying I wouldn't blame yourself, at least in my case. In many ways, like, my case blew up last October, and that was all to do with really me. That wasn't like what you'd done. In a lot of ways, you and I are very compatible in that way. Like, I operate the same way. I'm like, look, like, I'm just here to create a space where, like, you want to enjoy game content, sure. But after that, obviously you and I talk, Kyle, like, I was struggling with it a little bit. There is a little bit of a philosophical shift in you that it's like, I started to notice people in my orbit were like really fucking toxic on a level of like, it used to be that so many people in the content creator space were kind of trained with this idea of like, you got to let the audience say what they want to say. You can't punch down, that sort of thing.
I fucking hate that.
Yeah. And I'm just like,
that philosophy.
When you're getting berated as frequently as many of us do, I've had patience I've done this half my life. I've had patience for 14 years. My patience is kind of up with this shit, dude, where when I sign on, it's like, if you disagree with me, again, I'm, as a person who most of their content is produced as reviews, I know, it's there's going to be a level of disagreement always with what I say. And that's fine. Right. That's the nature of critiques. We all have different approaches to art and what we value, what we don't value. But I'm done with the, like, I sign on to Twitter and it's this fucking gaslighting campaign. And I see people who follow me who are like in a thread, like, this guy's always hated video games. Twitter has a great feature now, by the way. I don't know if you guys know it. You can remove people who follow you. I use it sometimes. I'm just like, you don't like me, bro. I was like, we just end this here.
I just block and unblock when I want one. Like,
you don't even have to do that now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, you just literally it's a remove follower option, and I'm like, this is great, because I don't know why, if you feel this way about me, why you would follow me, and I frankly don't care if you do or don't follow me. You're probably going to talk about me anyway. So that's one thing. That's kind of like the whatever. That's the smallest thing. What I have noticed, though, is a growing comfort of like, well, it's free speech, bro, as you proceed to say like the most deranged shit of all time. And it's like, yeah, it is free speech. Like, you can say that. I don't need to see it. I don't want to hear. I don't need to set, because like what happens is like those top comments, say in my case on videos, like they set the standard, like what's cool. Like, how far will he go? And when I see certain shit start to get to that top level, that is just being like deranged asshole behavior, and it's deeply personal to me, I'm just like, no, like, I'm just not dealing with it anymore. You know, I don't think there should be an issue anymore with the drawing of a line. You know, it's not like, oh, you voted Trump, get the fuck out. It's like, no, I don't operate on that level, dude. Like, I think that shit's stupid, frankly. I don't care what your walk of life is politically, or religion, all that shit. Like, I'm talking video games. Like, it's not that serious. But when you start to encroach on just being a complete dick, that's where I'm just like, I've even talked to Dustin about it. I'm just like, you know, I won't specify who we had on as guest, but there were just comments I was like, this isn't like a normal response to someone. Like, this isn't okay. That was the only time I did notice a change in our community where I was like, this is. Oh,
was it with Stuttering Craig?
No.
Oh, no, interesting. That was the one that for me where I was like, geez, people are missing the point of.
It was a Duke guest. No, this is.
Oh, I'm
this
sorry.
was no, you're good. Yeah, no, this is like.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about that.
A little bit ago. No, I talked to Dustin about it briefly. It was just kind of like hey, just like a heads up. I don't know what you want to do with this, but this is like, it's one thing to be like, this is bad take. Like, this game sucks. I don't agree with that, or whatever. But it's like another thing to like, again, I don't want to get too specific because I don't want to zero in on the person, but just like make specific comments about a person's appearance or whatever. I was like, dude, we are video game players. I should show up here in my fucking pajamas, my fucked up bedhead. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, I'm in my pajamas right now.
Like, I'm not trying to get dolled up for you. I'm here to talk about video games. I don't care if I look exhausted. I have a life outside of games, right? Like, I might look tired in a video. I might look really refreshed in a video. I sometimes look sweaty in a video because I hit the Peloton, I hop on the camera because that's just good for my schedule, right?
You mean you're a person?
Yeah, there's just this level of Colin, I know you'll know about this very well.
Yeah,
it's become extremely parasocial to a level where like I'll get people messaging me on a level of like talking to me like they have fucking know me, and I'm just like, no, like, we're just not doing this anymore.
That's
even the letter that Colin read the other day on Sacred about Colin's size. It's like, you guys really need to be cognizant of who you are as a listener and how often you fucking listen to us, because those are weird things to notice, even like as a regular friend, you know.
Yeah.
Like would you tell your friend like, why the fuck do you sigh all the time? Unless they're like it's an abrasive sigh that like every 5 minutes, which I've known people like that it's really bad. But you know, like, I never noticed Colin's size, or like the way people like talk about how, you know, the way I might stutter or interrupt, or the way Chris says certain words, like, you know, indubitably. I don't know what Chris fucking says, but
indubitably would be awesome if Chris was
saying. Yeah, he never says indubitably. I'm just literally putting another stupid
Willy Wonka ass word right there. That's what that is.
Yeah. Ostensibly, that's the word that Chris always uses, right? But then it's like, oh, Chris always says ostensibly. It's like, yeah, that's how talking works. Are you guys just
my word is
zeitgeist?
Yeah, I get that a lot. I
don't understand why you think someone saying words a lot is weird. You know, just like people getting mad at me on Constellation, you know, since we're all bitching or whatever, but like, people get mad at me about on Constellation, like, oh, Gene's fucking talking about himself all the time, and it's like, this is a fucking podcast where all four of us are talking about ourselves.
Yeah, it's storytelling podcast.
That's what we do.
It's a storytelling podcast. And another person on Patreon was like arguing with me about something, and then try to throw it back in my face, like, well, you're the one name searching yourself, finding comments on the Patreon, and it's like, you are commenting on our fucking Patreon in my fucking show, punching up.
Right.
I'm surprised. I'm reading the fucking comments and I'm responding to them. You know, you should be fucking grateful that I'm even taking the time to do this. You know, you fucking ingrate. You know. Anyways,
I know you guys know this, and I know I've said it before, but you guys are all three very popular, you know, social media, internet, whatever. So, I know. So I'll just say celebrity. I know you guys don't like that, but don't you know a lot of this? I'm not saying all of it, but a great deal of this is just the sort of cheap way to the least thoughtful way to just get any kind of engagement with you.
Bingo.
Guys.
Yeah. So
that's exactly what it is.
Yes. That's why I don't still to this day, I don't reply to just bad.
You don't take the bait.
It's so fucking tempting to just want to be like, I could end you in a heartbeat. But it's just, you grab onto it and you're just drowned in it. Twitter especially is a great example of it. Who I will go after is if I see another creator go for me. That is when I draw a fucking line. I had another creator a couple of weeks ago puppet some bullshit that I saw some comments saying, and I immediately fucking shot his ass down because I was just like, I don't care if some Joe Schmo viewer's got something to say about me. I'd lose my mind if I gave a fuck about that. But when it's a peer or someone I've been really good to and have had good engagement with, and you're going to come and just step into my space and just be a fucking cock to me, like, hell fucking no. That's where, Colin, we did talk about that actually. You were like, sometimes I thought about that. I was like, you're like, sometimes you do gotta like draw that line. I was like, I'm not, I'm definitely more of a passive person. I don't, because it's just for me, it's not even I'm afraid to. It's the headspace, bro. It's just like I don't need to get into that headspace. But like this is like that one time where I just like I'm not letting it get to this level. Like you can think that about me, but if you're gonna actually bring it to me when I have only engaged with you in a positive way, get the fuck out of here, dude.
Yeah.
And what is that? Just
Definitely.
like sort of riding your coattails or amplifying there?
It's like you gotta like it's a constant mathematical equation of like virtuing who like to who you like the in group or whatever. It's just
But don't they know people know that's what it is?
Yeah, I mean,
there's no self-awareness there.
Oh, people are stupid. So
I don't think a lot of people are on the level,
it was a dumb
frankly.
fight to pick. It was like, not even just like, don't fuck with me, bro. Just like, I've been wrong before, but it was just a really stupid hill to die on against me. I was just like, the fuck are you talking about? And that's the type of shit that will actually get under my skin. I'm just like, the thing that changed since October is I went from this level, and I've talked about it with a ton of people because it is the thing that I had to grapple with, and I've come around the corner now on it. But the thing I struggled with the most was I'm used to people who watch our content saying whatever the fuck they want about me. You can't control it. You can only curve it a little bit when it comes into your space, and you do the best you can. Even then, sometimes some shit just drips through, and you're like, okay, I'm doing my best here, and I'm trying to just at least set a good example. What changed for me is when you get to that level of, I am not Hollywood status, but I'm just going to use that term, where you get big enough where people start to think of you on that level where I noticed the perception of me shifted, where people who I have met before, I have ate dinner with before, broken bread with before, had good conversations with, not just online, like in person, suddenly became very comfortable just talking about me in this negative light publicly, or coming to me with that energy publicly. And or talking about me on a show publicly, even though they have only had good interactions with me. And that is the thing I did struggle to grapple with. I do care about what the audience says enough where it's like, I'm monitoring the feedback. I want them to like what I'm putting out there. But if they're like, oh, how dare you like Adam Fall? It's like, too bad. Like, this is my take. But when it comes to people who I have, and again, Colin, I'm sure you can totally feel this out on a much higher level than me. But for me, that has been the one thing I had to get over this year, was like just dealing with seeing people who I know, who I was like, I'm not my best friend, but like I'm acquainted with you. We've had positive interactions, just suddenly talk shit about me. I was like, where the fuck did this come from? And that's the level of comfort that I don't understand. Because it's one thing if someone who gets this parasocial interpretation of one of us, like, oh, Matty goofs off on his shows too much, he's clearly an asshole. It's like, okay, whatever, dude. You make that up in your heart. But when you've personally been with me and seen me like on, off camera, the consistency's there, and you still go out there and run your mouth about me, I'm like, what the fuck happened? And I think it just comes down to, you probably won't see this. And I've always found that very peculiar.
Because it also it's just as a deeply disingenuous thing. Like, I really don't interact with people privately that I wouldn't interact with publicly, and I'm 100%. Deeply loyal to people, especially the people that are with me now, because my whole social circle fell away. So I had the people that remained were like my real ride or die people, and created something totally new, which is great. The one thing I remember telling you when we were discussing your situation last year was, it is true. Like, you have to understand that there's just so much you can't control. Yeah. And that was a big reason with my whole approach to being like, to make it to raise the walls, like to put the fucking castle gate up and shit like that a little bit, and like make the moat 5 feet deeper and shit, was It's like we can actually control that. I have no interest in controlling anything outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. And it's what I was telling you. It's like something our dad really, really pinned in me when I was a kid was like, you have to understand there's so much you can't control. So you have to just focus energies and efforts on the things that you can. And like everything else, can't control the weather. You can't like shit like that. It's just, and you realize that. And I really try to check myself all the time about control. It all comes back to that. And if you relinquish that, and that's why I'm so disappointed in myself, even though I appreciate people saying it's not really my fault or it was a earnest effort. It's like, I am disappointed in that because I relinquished that control to human nature, I guess.
I call it raising the standards is what's happened. It's not because a lot of people interpret it as like muting and blocking people who disagree, but it's really just at the end of the day, the internet has evolved in a way where a lot of it is still brilliant. I still love the internet. Obviously, it's the source of my job, but I do still really love it. But there's so many people online, so many people talking that I do think a standard raise is like in order by this point in society. It's like, there are a lot of people who are just comfortably acting degenerate. It's like, you can do that. I don't care. No skin off my nose, but like, do you have to do it in my 2 channels and LSMs, like defining Duke, all that stuff? It's like, no, you don't have to really deal with that. That's not the type of, if you want to put it in a business spin, it's like, that's not the customer I want to attract. Like I think, what did you say for our bio? It's like, we make podcasts for thinking people.
For thinking people. Yeah.
It's like, that's all I want. If you think and you're like, I disagree with them. It's like, I love that personally, because to me, the ultimate respect you can have between the creator and audience is like, yeah, I don't feel that. Like, I'm not in line with you on that, but you are an interesting listen, or I see where you're coming from on what you're saying, where I still respect your take, even if it's not what I have. That is the best relationship that you can have, I think, with your audience. And again, you talk about common, the smallest denominator or whatever. That's what I've just shifted my mindset to, is like, at the end of the day, I am talking about probably a couple hundred to a couple thousand people. If I look at my numbers, I'm like, I blink and I'm like, that's such a small pocket that it's wasted energy at this point. The only people I end up caring about is like, if I know you and I see that, then I'm going to feel, even that I'm basically over at this point, but I will feel some type of way probably initially, like, what the fuck?
Right. Like, well, and that goes into what you were saying is like, it's a vanishingly small group of people. So instead of catering everything to like, and trickling it all through and pretending something's for everyone when it's really for them, we'll just get rid of them. Like, that's my whole
organically.
It's like, we're just like, I will pick you off from these places as I notice you, like, and there are going to be consequences for people's actions. That's just the way it's going to be. Like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay. And I said it explicitly on Sacred Symbols. Like, I know this will cost me some business. Like, I get it. Like it's, but that's just the price that we have to pay, I guess, to have a more normal situation.
Yeah. And, I also just know people like lie about this shit. Like when I was going through what I was going through in October, people were like, oh, he's muting comments on his video. Like, I'm just like, I did not have the time or the mental capacity to go into that comment section. Like, I was not meeting anybody. But at this point now, if like you're just a complete piece of shit to me, 100%. But like, people just lie about it, where I'm just like, you guys don't know when you're getting muted or not, clearly, if you're gonna make it up. And
I gotta say, like, because some of it's just video game disagreement shit. Like, I don't care about any of that, but like, I do think that like people often say, it's like, people often want to abuse me for political reasons, and they'll even claim that our shows are political. And I'm like, not really. I mean, Sacred Symbols, we talk about trade, tariffs, creation and AI legislation, mergers and acquisitions. We're not really talking partisan politics. And Constellation, I don't pick the topics anymore, and I haven't chosen a political topic in a long time, but the show is just not political. So I think,
but if it is political, you guys labeled it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But also, it's like, I just think the political situation has broken people sufficiently, some people, where I think, and I'm not saying that is a partisan thing. Like, I think people on both sides, in quotes, are deeply broken in some ways, like, at the most online people, let's say, that they expect that everyone is like that, and that they're like as ramped up and amped up and crazy about things as they are. And I'm like, no, like, I can still speak to people I disagree with. I'm sorry. Like, I don't agree. I just don't partake in your worldview of like isolating and alienating everyone around me who doesn't agree with me completely in lockstep. It's just not the way I've ever operated. I feel like that is weird, actually, and fruitless. Ultimately, I'm not going to alienate people I love and people I care about and people I'm curious about and people I like and entertainment and music and all these things because of political disagreements. I don't care.
It's difficult too, though, because we're operating in this world now where we're talking to an audience where those people have made everything political. Every topic has been politicized.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't go in for that, actually, personally, and a lot of people don't. But to a contingent of people, however many or however few, that every single topic has been, we're in this climate where everything is politicized.
Well, it's funny, and this is a political statement, so I'll preface it so you can agree or disagree with it. That's totally fine. But that's why I find the argument about like, oh, the right wing is so why is the right wing so obsessed with DEI? It's like no. Sorry, nope, absolutely not. Like you can't foist that on the world and then pretend that people aren't allowed to react to it. You know,
sure.
So. Yeah, so end political statement. Back to it.
It's changing.
There's the window of reaction time for everyone.
Right.
Well, Matty, let's stay with you. I mean,
Sure.
Kyle, you have you said?
Oh yeah, no, I've said my piece. I'm sorry I
did?
went on for so long. I just thought I'd give people some insight into the workings of the company and things that I've been grappling with. Small things,
I have to say,
seemingly small
it's
things.
fascinating, even from my perspective, because a lot of that behind the curtain stuff I don't know about. You know what I mean? And it's not that I make really much of an effort to know about it. I kind of remain detached from that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And just to leave it to Colin's sense. But still, for me, it's like that's knowledge.
Yeah. And to be clear, the RSS situation is fixed now. It was broken for some people for 6 weeks. And so problem solved, but unnecessary, unforced error.
Speed bump.
How was Patreon with kind of bringing it back to where it needed to be?
They understood. I mean, their Patreon's very good about things, and they see the comments, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have administrator access to things, so it's like they're like, oh shit, like they knew they broke things for us, you know. But like we opted in it, they didn't do anything wrong. This is again why you test things, because you're like, oh, I didn't even consider this use case, which is silly in hindsight, but we just didn't. And so it was urgent to them, and they were emailing us being like, we are working on it, like we have added it to the 1.0 roadmap, like we will fix it. Like, so that's why I wasn't that worried about it, you know,
that's cool.
Because I worked and I told them this, and I'm like, I have the unusual experience of working at a major website, and I know how difficult it is to change anything.
Sure.
And how like, it's shocking. We had very talented engineers, and like, but you change one thing and it's like, oh my God, it just broke like fucking half the site. We don't have no idea why. Mm-hmm. And so I was wary of their ability to fix it. Because I was like, I know that people out there are saying like, just make a fucking option.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, I know it's got to be more complicated than that. Do you guys really think you can do it? And they're like, yeah, we think we can do it. We just need time to figure it out. And they did. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Matty, moving on to you. Just talk about, whether it's related to what exactly we're talking about here or not. Just times that your plan didn't go according to, just went awry, just blew up in your face. Went sideways.
I got two. I'll throw the funny one in first to break up the serious conversation, because one of them is young Matty having a little bit of a ploy. He had a grand scheme, didn't go quite as he expected. So I grew up, my favorite game growing up was RuneScape. Like, I adored that MMO. I played it all the time. A lot of people like, what I do Retro Rebound, and a lot of people were like, how'd you miss this game? How'd you miss this game? I was like, I was playing RuneScape. You don't get it. I played for like 4 or 5 years straight, just RuneScape. Like, I loved that game. Yeah.
Our cousin Junior was a big RuneScape fan.
Oh, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
There's just something about the music, the world. I mean, it's so it's so viewed in a positive light that they brought back the old school version I grew up with, and they moved on with this separate version that they continue to update and modernize and that sort of thing. And I think it's just amazing that it's still around. Like, I know they have a mobile version. There was a leak that there might be like a survival RuneScape game, which I would be interested in. Okay. So I'm going to be interested to see how they expand, if at all. But growing up, RuneScape, like, you're lazy. I was a lazy fucking kid, dude. So in RuneScape, there are like tricks to getting rich. Like, RuneScape really taught me a lot about like just the economy at a young age. Like buy low, sell high, just like very basic economic fundamentals. And like putting in the hard work and getting something out of it. Like this game taught me so much of that because I was this lazy kid. And so, one of the you'd make these like get rich quick guides in RuneScape. And like, I'd always love to work toward 1 million gold. A way I do that, and they always recommend it. I remember like buying RuneScape guidebooks on eBay and stuff. They're like, go to the cows in Lumbridge, kill them, collect their hide. You're going to level up in the meantime, sprint to Varrock, deposit them in your bank, come back, do this X amount of times. And then they had this thing called the Grand Exchange. You put them all up there. And like, as people search these things in the Grand Exchange, like, oh, I need cowhide because I turned that into like leather hide. And I'm going to use that to build like armor and get my crafting skills up. Like it was just this robust economy in RuneScape. But it took so long because I'm a kid. So everything felt like it took forever. So I start to hear about little things you can do online to like cheat the game, get some free gold, get party hats, get gilded armor, dragon armor. These are like some of the rarest things you can get, at least in RuneScape at that time. And, if you want to buy them, it's like 3-4 million. And like, there are people who are like level 3, which is like the starter level after the tutorial. And they'd be walking around with a party hat, which is like 3 million gold, but they had never leveled up at all. They just worked the economy, like the masterful player. I say all of this, I preface all of this because I'm young. I don't want to put in all of that work. So I start to find online on eBay, like you can buy gold. There was a site, I think it was called rsforgold.com. I don't know if that's what it is nowadays or if it's around, but it was a website where you would buy RuneScape gold and someone would sign into your account and either farm it for you, which I did pay for one time. I had someone farm 100K for me.
This is awesome. I never knew this.
Yeah. Or they actually have accounts that are farming gold, and RuneScape now has, or at least at the time, eventually set trade limits. So people couldn't get scammed. Like, hey, give me a million gold and I'll go get you this, right? Like this was a huge economic crisis for the RuneScape community. People were getting scammed out of their shoes because they would agree to trades by accident and send all their money. The player would like log off, go to another world, and that was it. You just lost all of your money. But at that time, you would have, these accounts would just hold so much gold. They'd be like, all right, this guy just gave us $50. Go give him his digital currency. And so they just dump the gold into your account. Sometimes you'd coordinate through like the instant messaging system, like a little meetup somewhere, like meet me in Varrock by the fountain and we'll make a trade there. And they come over and they drop like 1 million gold into your lap. And that would be it. You're like, okay, cool. I'm rich now. And like, you didn't have to work for it. Okay. Setup's done. So I find out about this, and money is just a pure it's a concept to me. I'm a kid. All I know is my allowance. And so I got a hold of Dad's credit card. My grand plan was, and there really wasn't a plan, but it was just, I'm going to load my account up with gold and blame someone else. I will play stupid. I was in 5th grade at the time, so about like 10 years old. I knew better. I definitely knew better. So I get the credit card and I spend $500 on RuneScape gold. And, I get by and I'm like, this guy comes over, dumps like millions of gold in my account. I'm like, yeah, let's fucking go. I'm all in. And my dad I hear him talking to my mom. He's like, hey, there's a $500 charge on our card, and it's like for this RS for gold. And my parents knew I loved RuneScape, so they knew. They came to me like, was this you? And I was like, I play stupid. I'm like, no, it wasn't me. Now I'm putting on a pretty good front, right? Like the plan's going smooth. Like I have, despite me being the easiest suspect, right? Our son, RuneScape credit card got a ton of money charged on it.
Yeah,
bless my parents. They were just like, okay. So I can't, because my parents don't remember the story, but I can't tell if my dad was trying to like fish it out of me a bit. But I remember I was like in the bedroom and my dad was like on the phone with the credit card company. He's trying to find out who charged this money and stuff. Like I've just made a living hell of a day for my parents. And I'm talking to my dad. I'm like, yeah, what do you think's going to happen to the guy who took your money? And he looks at me. He's like, whatever happens, he's definitely going to jail. And so it's like my face just drops. And I just quietly make my way back to I was in his bedroom. I quietly make my way to my bedroom, and it's there. I'm just like sitting on my bed, just staring at the floor like I'm going to go to fucking jail. Like, I'm so fucked right now. Like, my dad's going to get me arrested over RuneScape gold. So I break down into tears. I'm freaking out. I'm crying. My mom's like, what's happening? I fess up. They managed to get the money back. I had to give my gold back. Got banned from RuneScape for a while. But my grand plan of getting rich in RuneScape without any effort really smushed the laziness out of me. I was like, I'll work hard for anything now. But I tried to get away with it, and I failed, but definitely made for a good story and a good tale of RuneScape addiction for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So,
and they couldn't get reimbursed, right? Because you spent the money.
No, they did.
No, they did. Yeah, they got the money back, or they got like half the money back, something like that. I lost my allowance for a long ass time. Like, I had to fucking work it off. Like, I was paying a debt. So my parents did the right thing for sure. But yeah, that was definitely a plan I had as a kid that just did not go well. Blew up in my face completely. Almost got cuffed and booked by my dad. So that would have been crazy.
Did that end RuneScape for you, Matty? Were you done at that point?
Let me think.
You're still in.
I quit around 6th grade, so I was still in a little bit, but I was much more measured. Much more measured.
It's really interesting. I'm reading. I found a website, problemas.com, which seems like the big RuneScape gold seller, and it's. I'm just reading about it as you've been talking. I'm reading it because it seems like sanctioned and legal, where they're basically buying people's currency and then redistributing it for they're a hub. So they'll do the legwork of going and getting people's money and rare items and shit too.
Yeah.
Okay. And resell them. But it seems like it's all totally there's nothing weird about it, I guess. So this is a place just people go and do it. They have all these reviews and stuff.
It's known.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that it's totally safe and you can be 100% certain that the gold is safe here.
Yeah, you can pay for stats. I remember you want 99 strength, you give your account login and some dude while you're at school would just farm for you and just get your skills up. And
fascinating.
Yeah, I remember doing that because I was just such a corner cutter as a kid. I'm so glad it's not a part of my DNA now, but as a kid I was always looking for the easy way out, and that was definitely one of them where I was like, oh sweet, someone can farm for me, because you don't get. I think you love playing games, but you don't get the enjoyment of the design of a game until you're much older. Where I'm well, part of the RuneScape's fun is learning the economy and putting the work in and getting something out. That stat system they have, it's really good. But I was just trying to fucking get around it and not actually play the game. I just wanted the stats.
Yeah, exactly.
I just wanted to get the stats.
That's what I was going to say. It begs the question, are you actually playing the game? But it's such a kid thing because you just want to glean the enjoyable side of it.
Yeah, and now the community for RuneScape, from what I saw, was pretty good. I fired it back up in 2017 for a video. I was just I just want to fire this up, play it for a video, see what happens. Some guy randomly gave me $1 million. And I was wow. This is a real full circle story. I was fishing in I think Draenor Village is what it's called. I was just fishing in that town, and some guy's hey, and just comes up to me, trades with me, offers me $1 million, walks away, and I'm just what the fuck? Because the other thing that changed, I guess, because was I playing old school at the time, or was it 3.0? I can't remember, but I was wait, is the trade limit not a thing anymore? But this guy just dumped $1 million gold in my lap, and I was wow, kid me would have freaked out, and I literally just didn't give a fuck. And that's when I was
so cool.
I think I'm done now. I haven't played since.
It must be. What is the? Is it Jagex?
Jagex. Yeah.
They must know. It's very easy to see if different people are logging into people's accounts and stuff like that. I mean, that's even if you're using VPNs and stuff, it would be so. They're totally cool with it. I guess it's very much I remember seeing a documentary about Second Life, which I was mega fascinated by.
Yeah,
I think it still exists, but I don't know if it's that big anymore. But where
it's still around.
Yeah. There's economies in that game, parallel real world economies, where people, many thousands of people at one time were making money just making things and selling them in second.
Wow.
Yeah.
And a lot of this stuff wasn't necessarily allowed, I guess, but was just kind of because it's whatever lubricates the wheels of commerce for. It's actually kind of that's what's so fun about game economies is, and we talk about EVE Online all the time. On Sacred Symbols, but many games with crazy economies where it's it actually acts like a real economy, the mirror of a real economy, and you can actually control it like a real economy and regulate it or unregulate it like a real economy.
Yeah.
There was a game recently that had a really busted economy. It was a story. I can't remember what it was.
Was it
wrote in about it.
New World?
Yeah, maybe that's what it was,
Yeah.
where like the economy was all fucked up in the game and like how badly it was affecting it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I love that. And there are real, no joke, real economists at some of these studios that work and like they're in charge of like the economy.
Makes sense. Yeah, I never thought of that though, because it apply all the same rules apply. It's an economy, whether virtual or actual, right?
Yeah, and RuneScape has one of the best. I thought, like I mean, again, that game taught me so many lessons. I remember like a guy offering to get me such a easy trick to fall for when you're a kid, but he was like, "Yeah, if you like let me sign into your account, I think he said I'll get you like your party hat or whatever." Like, there were people who would like stand in the banks and just offer to get you like rare items. And so again, lazy Matty strikes again. I'm like, here's my sign-in information, DM it to this fucking random. And when I tried to sign back in, it just kept saying like, someone's playing right now. So I signed into my alt account. I fucking tracked this guy down. And I find him and I see him like trading all of my stuff away to another account. And I'm just like, stop it. Like, I think I hit him with like my dad works at Jagex. Like I hit him with all of that stuff that obviously did not work, lost everything. Like, yeah, that game really was like a spirit breaker in a lot of ways that I think just taught me some valuable life lessons. Truly.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
It's good shit.
Yeah, that is really fun. That's like a fun story. And an interesting insight into your the psychoses of Matt.
Yeah, I know, right? That's a formative game for me. Now, funny enough, we'll stick with games because my other story about things not going according to plan, a little more serious, but it's hard for me to get specific because it's obviously not like announced or anything yet. But I will say game development is a lot of like, you think it's going one way and then you make a change. And it's a lot of just like decision making. And this past week, I think we're making like one of our biggest decisions where I'm like, we're as a collective very excited because we're just like, okay, like this feels like the right direction. But you start to realize when you're making all of these pieces for a project that you can like there's a level of power and like we can take these pieces on the chessboard and put them anywhere we want. And that is like both captivating and paralyzing at the same time. And so when we started this project years ago, there was like a particular vision of like what this whole thing would be. And game development's interesting in that it kind of breaks you down and makes you think about it. Like, I can still do this, but there's always a smarter way to do the thing that you're doing. There's always a smarter way to accomplish whatever this grand vision is in a way that's uncompromised, honestly, way more enjoyable based on what we're doing and like still achieving what that initial spark was all about, like the creative fulfillment, obviously, if you will. But it's just been such an educational journey in that avenue. It's like, that spirit, that project is still the same thing since day one, but the way the pieces on the board have been rearranged multiple times, it's like, I look at the initial plan and where we're at now, and I'm like, we're still on track, but I'm like, wow, this is also just transformed in so many ways where I kind of thought, hey, if you have a great team, everyone kind of follows their schedules, you kind of just go. Like you're just on a train, it's forward momentum, but it's a lot of stop and go traffic, especially when you're working on like a new thing. Like this isn't like an old thing. Like we look at something in the past and can reference it. It's like this brand new thing. There's a lot of questions that you never knew you'd have to ask. Like when you do concept work, it's like we had people who were just doing sketches for us, and a lot of our 3D artists were like, can't really make something off of that. So we had to figure out like, what's the concept process? Like, what does that look like? So it's been so educational in every like corner of what makes a video game that it feels like all of that knowledge has really come together for us with this like renewed vision where we're like we feel good. Like this is it. And not like a setback, just like a reorientation of the pieces where I'm like, fuck yeah. Like this is like, I guess I shouldn't say it kind of went according to plan, but by it not going according to plan, it's going according to plan.
Yeah, that's
so. It's
awesome.
not like a blow up in my face. It's like I would call it a realization, and you just understand. I think it's just very like I wish more people could try game development because it makes you start to realize as you have these aha moments so regularly you realize how bad some decisions are made on like these bigger projects in AAA. And you get it because the communication line is so much longer for them than like mine or Colin's team. But it's still a level of like, you just see how quickly a project can get itself into shit. And so, yeah, that's my shortened story. Because again, I could go into I will go into more detail one day, but I think game development is just a real whole, like, it's not going according to plan. How do you adjust? It's not going according to plan. How do you adjust? And you try to prevent the blow up in your face at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
But
that's
man,
cool. That's awesome,
yeah,
though, dude.
Yeah, I love it. I really do. Like it is it's become an obsession. You know, I don't know how else to put it. Like it is something I think about all the fucking time, you know? So I'm always like game planning, I'm always thinking about it. And so again, not like to the extreme, like we were talking about where like we had this plan, it's really fucked, but like, it's still just, I couldn't help but think of that immediately when I saw this topic, Dag, about just game development being it's really a sequence of decisions and things not going according to plan. You know, I've only worked in video game development on the creative side for 2 years of a 28-year career. So it's really a drop total. So it's like really a drop in the bucket. But working in video games, there is no other medium where, and you know, I'm preaching to the choir here with Kyle too, but where every decision affects every other decision in such a dramatic way like that. I always call it the domino effect. Like everything you do for games affects the next thing, and that affects the thing that came before. So there's this crazy branch or root effect in video games that's very complicated on the creative end and the technical end. Mm-hmm. And then when you have to merge those two things together. But you know what I always think about with you guys when you're developing your projects now, with Kyle too, but I never mentioned this to him, but I always meant to. I always think it's so sad when you guys are going through this journey that we should not to add more to your, you know, not to add more to your plate, but there should always be a making of documentary going on. I think about that all the
along
time.
The way.
I don't know how I've thought about just like making a weekly video series, just talking about once the game is out, just kind of giving people that insight. Cause that's the main thing I want to do is like share with actual context. Like, here's how we made this choice. Here's how we did this choice. Like, and really just getting into the thick of it. Cause I think that's the missing context for so many people. Like the amount of interviews I've watched where people are like, oh man, game development's so hard. Game development, that's the most go-to statement in any fucking interview. Yeah, it's just such a hard thing. It's like, what about it is hard? It's a skill job. If you're good at something, like if you're a good basketball player, you have a nice shot, like then what makes it so difficult when you have been trained in this field and people have done it for 20 years? What mystifies you so greatly? And I think I'm figuring out it's like the planning. You have this grand plan and you go into it. And if your grand plan is good, which I think ours is, all those pieces remain stuck together as you like change things as the things moving along the track.
Sure.
You know, but you're so right, Dake. That level of like art affects programming affects the quests. You know, it's like it all bumps back into each other. It's literally like you rear end someone in traffic and that car bumps right into the car in front of them. You know, that's kind of how it goes.
I don't envy it. You guys work so hard. Even just being involved in the animation of that, have every animation had to resolve back into itself or to another animation, and everything's linked.
Yeah,
it's maddening when you realize what kind of freedom you have when you're working in TV or when you're working in film versus, especially for the animator and the designer, versus working in a game where everything kind of comes full circle. It's this, everything is cyclical. Everything kind of resolves back into itself. You know, A meets Z and then back to A again. It's like, it's a whole method of thinking, you know. Strong foundation is important though, Matty. That's important. You know, you have that blueprint.
Yeah.
And then that strong blueprint. And then you could stick to it. You could veer from it. But it's just like having storyboards in a film. Like, I don't know how anyone operates without that foundation.
Sure.
That bedrock, you know.
For us, it's like the guiding narrative theme that like dictates a lot for us, you know. I mean, that's a blessing and the curse of working with me. I'm a very story oriented guy. So it's like, you know, we have this theme that this message we hope to communicate. And it's like, that determines gameplay choices. That determines music. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Artistically, 100%, everything, you know?
Yeah. I'm jealous of you in some sense because with Lily Mo, I really don't have time like to do much. Like I just, I don't know how you, like you are obviously much more of a workhorse than me, because it seems like you both work more than me and also play more than me. So I don't really know what I'm even doing. But with Lily Mo, it's often the games are often presented to me, and then I come up with the story while they're being developed. And it's funny. There's often a hinge point where it's like we have to have something locked in, and it just happened with one of our games. It's funny. Like, I'm not blowing smoke up his ass. Like, Barry's a little bit of an auteur. The way we develop games is not the way most studios develop games, even small studios. We have like literally like 10 things going at any one time. Sometimes these things just marinate for fucking years. We have literally Discord channels dedicated to each game, and Barry will just randomly update them, or whoever's working on the stuff, like for art assets and stuff, will update them as we go. And so every once in a while we'll pull the plug and be like, this isn't working. But oftentimes, like, the original game that we were going to do was a brawler called, people might remember if they're old school Sacred Symbols fans, we were going to call it Please Protect Chris. And that was the original idea for the Sacred Symbols game. And it was about Chris's journey through Los Angeles to come to Santa Monica to record an episode. And it was going to be a Double Dragon style thing where he's like dealing with bums and like fucking street rats and shit like that. But it's still sitting there. Like, and every once in a while he'll go and poke around with it. And it's like not really canceled, and it has no assets. And what we had recently, we're working on a game which we were calling Spear Game. It has I think a more strict name now. I don't know exactly what it is, but it was to give people a little insight. It was like the people that came up with the idea, like the artists that we're working with or whatever in Barry, were like, we kind of see this as a Greek thing. And I'm like Greek, like almost like God of War style mythologies and whatnot, Kid Icarus, whatever. And I was like, that's cool. I'm not really into that, so I'm not going to write it. And which I was totally fine with. I'm like, you guys, this is all you guys. Like, I don't mind. I'm like, whatever. And then they were like, no, we kind of want you to write it. So I came in and I'm like, well, it's going to be medieval then. And that's like literally the way decisions are made, because I'm like, that's something I want to write, is like medieval, like a medieval level thing.
Mythology.
No, not at all. Like, no offense. Like, I know that's like huge. People love that shit. I don't care. Like, I don't care.
You got to write what you care about.
You got to do
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And what I care about is Eastern European vampires. So,
nice.
But I was like, so I just come up with these little ideas, but it's a bummer when it's perfect in our pocket, Matty, of making NES and SNES style games, because I can literally write them in a few days. The most thorough writing I did for any of the games was Super Perils of Baking by far. That was the hardest one to write by far. And again, I always say I have a huge chip on my shoulder that's not like our best selling game. It's actually like our worst selling game. Because I'm like, it's so good and so much work went into the narrative. It was fun to write.
Yeah, it's really cute.
But but typically it's like things are presented and I think about things a lot. Like, I've always been like this as a writer. I write notes sometimes or whatever, but like often I'll just think about things even for months. And then I'll just sit down one day and just write it.
Yep.
And that's the way I've written most games, where like usually they're over a weekend or 2 weekends where I'm like, I'm writing the whole thing now. I'm going to write all the dialogue, all of the Bible stuff, like enemy lists and bestiaries and just bang them out. And I have no more time than that. And honestly, it's because I don't make any money off of Illymo. Like like my percentage of the company just goes right back into the company. And I have to really focus my energies on like what makes money and like what people are most reliant on.
Sure.
But it's my dream one day to be much more hands-on, like the entire time with the game, as opposed to what ping-ponging back and forth, which is what it usually does. Like, I'll usually have builds and play these games on like Steam, and people are putting art into them and we're tweaking things. And I'm kind of, especially as games get closer and closer. Like, I played Tribreaker by the time it came out for like, a long time, like 50 hours. And it's not that long. So you eventually get into the weeds, but I can't be there the whole time. And that's kind of a bummer. And that's what would happen with the role-playing game that we're working on, which we're still doing, and it's playable and it's going. It's it's way bigger than all of our other projects. So it's just going to take time, and it's not going to be the next game that comes from us. But I had this great idea and I love the idea and the story and the characters and all the rest. And I had to let it go. Like, Jono is the one that's writing it wrote the script.
Yeah.
I wrote like this, I have this, it's still in my loft, like a huge bulletin board of like all the characters and all the story beats and all the dungeons and the locations and like what everything is and what the story is and the world and everything. But I didn't write the script.
Yeah, you outlined it for him.
Right. And so it's going to be something like story, characters and world by Colin Moriarty, written by, John O'Peck and Colin Moriarty. Cool. And I'm bummed that I had to do that, but it's like the game would have never happened if it was relying on me, because I don't have any more energy or time for it.
Yeah,
I don't.
Two things that come to mind with that. Number one is I feel that's why we did our shift, because I was basically making a game in preparation for like full-time work on it. But I had this eureka moment of which, it should have come much earlier, but it was like, what if we were making a game that we could finish in a part-time capacity? What does that look like? And as that game got smarter over the last few months, I'm just like, this is it. And it lets me work on it without taking my eye off the ball. Cause I've technically lost a ton of money on the game, if you really want to look at it that way. Cause I've just sunk it into people working on it, and we have not sold anything yet. And I'm not even looking at it as like, when we sell that game, will I make my money back? I don't care. Like, I just want to put something out there that I'm really passionate about. We have the opportunity to.
Plus, you can amortize the losses.
I guess so, yeah.
That's really cool, though.
But the other thing about the auteur thing is something I do relate to, and that narrative thing is something I refuse to let go of, because I've tried to bring in people. Jono actually did help a little bit with, and he's a great writer. He did help write some characters with me, and his writing is really good. But I like a particular, at least for the world I'm shaping, like I like a particular style, and it was like him. I had a couple of friends help me. Pretty much is like, I'm the only writer at this point. It's like, I just get insight feedback. I'm like, what do you think? And just go that way. Like, I definitely think my art director even said it's like an auteur style that I'm doing here. And I mean, it makes sense. A lot of people check with me before they make certain decisions, because it's like a very narratively driven game, and like it's coming straight from me. All these characters are coming straight from me for the most part. It's a collaborative effort through and through, but there's always like a negative connotation to that. I've never quite understood why. But I feel you on that. It's just something like I could not relent on, because anytime, and I did keep an open mind, I did try it and get like people to like write for me and just be like, all right, like, what if I'm not the perfect writer? Like, what if someone else is better than me? But it's just like in how it's captured and the things I want to articulate at the certain moments, you just can't tell someone, right? It's their vision versus your own.
It's a vision, yeah.
And when you have that collision, it's like, well, I am lucky enough to have the choice to be like, I'll handle it, like after this show, I'm finishing our scenario. Like, that is what I'm going to do.
I love that you're calling it your scenario. How Japanese.
Yeah, that is right.
It's true. That's
when I was a kid, I was like, what the fuck is the scenario? Like, I didn't even know, like, it would be like scenario, some Japanese name. I'd be like, what the fuck does that mean? It's the writer.
Yeah. Because then after that, once it's good and you show it to the team, you're like, here's our story. We have all these locations, or like pretty much most of our game is blocked out. It's like, okay, what do you guys think of this? And then we kind of just, once we all agree with the vision, like I am a little bit of like, I present the idea and then we discuss as a group to account for any pitfalls that might be there. And then, we're pretty close to like the green light of just like, let's go for it.
Cool, man.
So
I love
that's
that.
to the point of game development. I'm just like, yeah, like that is what Daig's topic is. I think that's game development. It's like, I think if you look at it from where it started to where it is now, it's just so fascinating. Because it's just a series of plans that, in them not going exactly how my amateur mind, I'm still amateur, but how it went when we first started versus where we're at now, it's like, I feel like I've learned a million things. And that's why I'm so into it. I just have so much. It is very hard work. There's, especially these last few weeks, there's been weeks I'm just like, I'm going to fucking shoot myself. I'm like, this is so fucking stressful, but it's also so rewarding and validating. And there is a real privilege to being able to say like, I one day will be able to, alongside a team of really talented people, be able to put something out there. And, I've had friends work on it. My wife works on the game. She's really good. Like, it's really fucking cool. Just to see it come into life.
I love the premise too, dude. I have to say, of like, what can we create on a part-time basis that we'd be happy with? Because it makes the goal so attainable, especially when you're involved with other things.
Mm-hmm.
And as an entry, and maybe as kind of like ground zero for what you could do in the future, but as like a first outing.
Yeah, that was
really
the thing
cool
that we talked about a lot as a team, is like, this is the universe. It's like, how do you bring game one to the forefront in a way that's not compensating, that when you put it out there, it is a very complete experience. And I would leave it at just that. But That's a tough question to answer because, that's how you get to games that are like cliffhangers. And for me, as like a narrative freak, I'm like, fuck no. I was like, you can tease shit, but cliffhangers, fuck no. Like that was the problem we were having. And so when we came to this kind of realization, I was like, fuck yeah, like this feels it, so it is that sort of vision. And yeah, I'm pumped. I not really on topic, but again, I still feel somewhat on topic. But yeah, those would be my two stories on things not going according to plan.
Yeah, that's definitely on topic. I mean, Gene, I'm the big failure here so far. I mean, Matty's a thief, but I'm like really I'm like the big failure here so far, as far as like plans blowing up in my face. What do you got? Does the Genester, Mean Gene, was there ever a scheme you've hatched that just kind of went sideways? Plans in life, things as a kid, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I'll make this real quick because I've told this story before, and I feel like I've definitely told it when Colin and I first spoke in our very first interview together back in April 2022. When Colin was really interested in my career, but really the only thing that really kind of didn't work out the way I wanted to was right after college. I did not get a job anywhere. I went to Cal State Fullerton, a state school. I was an intern at the Orange County Register and at the San Gabriel Valley Tribune. Neither place was hiring. The Orange County Register wanted to hire me, but they had a weird requirement in place, this misguided attempt at DEI, where they every new hire, no matter what they would have, they would need to know a second language, and be tested on that second language. And we would need to know to interview in that second language.
Wow.
And this was when the register was trying to like branch off into like Spanish language communities, of course, in Southern California, as well as the Vietnamese language communities, huge in Southern California as well. And I was like, I'm just a stupid American. I only know how to speak English to this day. Basically, I know a little bit of Japanese, and that's what I said. I was like, I know a little bit of Japanese, and they're like, can you interview in it? And I was like, don't think I can. So they were like, well, come back, learn more Japanese, and come back, and we'll hire you. And I just didn't. I applied. My biggest failure really is applying to the Los Angeles Times 11 times. It was my Valhalla. It was my dream goal to work there. I studied the LA Times so much that there was this Chinese restaurant that I would always go to, and I would always pick up a copy of the LA Times, have a pen, and just start marking things about how they write, their editing style, how they wrote headlines, how they wrote like captions and everything like that. I studied their whole operation from stem to stern, or whatever, as Colin would say, just to really, really understand that place. And they never gave me a chance. I never got a phone call. I even applied to again, it's keeping with the theme of DEI. I applied to their DEI program. They have a program called MetPro, which is Minority something reporting operation or whatever. I don't fucking know. They never fucking hired me. This was their whole intern. This is not even a hiring program. This was for their fucking internship.
That sucks.
Where they were going to hire minority interns. And I was like, look, I'm Asian, and I'm a good reporter, and I just never got it. So that's why I stayed in Southern California for a good 6-7 months, completely unemployed, not really having a place to stay. So I stayed in my buddy's garage with a second Dreamcast for 7 months. Got super high. He worked at a sandwich shop. So I used to just get free sandwiches.
Sick.
Check out my buddy over at the shop, get a sandwich, go back to the garage, and get super lit and just play some fucking Power Stone, and I'd be like, I got a Power Stone right here, buddy, right in my head. That would just be my days. So that was like my big failure. I deeply consider myself a huge failure in life when I returned to Guam. I fucking hate Guam. None of us here actually live in our hometown, so I think I can speak loudly that like when you come from a small hometown, you feel really restricted, especially on an island, when you're surrounded by an ocean.
Yeah,
that your world is so fucking small, so that's why like I really, really into like Bruce Springsteen songs where he's talking about going on the Thunder Road, gonna grab my girl, get into a Ford truck and just start driving. I couldn't even fucking drive anywhere in Guam. You know, the driving would take 30 minutes, and I'll hit the ocean. It was like,
is it small? I don't know how big Guam is.
you can literally drive around the whole place in 30 minutes, a half hour.
Wow, it's that small.
It's that fucking small.
Holy shit!
It was like I was on the fucking Truman Show. I couldn't get out. You know.
That sounds claustrophobic.
Yeah.
So like even like I'm hearing like this dude like in New Jersey. I'm like, you can just go to fucking New York. Fuck you, Bruce. You know, talking about the Thunder Road. At least you got a Thunder Road. You know, I got nothing. So I went back to So I left California. I was like, I'm unemployed. I got no job. No one wants to hire me. This is a shitty market. This is 2003.
Yeah,
you know, and it
right
was
after
already
the
a shitty
.com
medium.
bust. Yeah.
Yeah.
The .com bust. The media market was already shrinking. If you know, already to that point. So I already knew what was going on.
That was tough.
So I just moved back to Guam, and the Guam paper hired me, and I just started working there. And you know, this is a tiny paper, 20,000 circulation. You know, I was making $22,000 a year. You know, I started at $19,000 a year, and I left the paper making $24,000 a year.
Wow.
I was editor of the paper, and I only still made up to $24,000 a year. So
how does that go anywhere on Guam or not really? Because I assume everything's pretty expensive, right?
Real estate is kind of expensive because no one fucking wants to live there. So like you could have an apartment for like $400 back in the day, which is still kind of a lot, you know, and not nearly enough for a $20,000 salary, you know.
Yeah.
And you'll get a shitty place for like probably like $480, I remember, you know,
Okay.
at the time. So the real estate market was not that hot there. Not like Hawaii. I mean, you would like I understand the assumption because land is so limited. So you would think that, you know, that the price of land and real estate would be high. But again, just nobody wants to live on fucking Guam. So, you know, it's not that big of a deal. The cost of goods was expensive.
Yeah, that's what I was assuming.
Yes,
for sure.
But because we have something called the Jones Act, where only a U.S. Ships can actually bring in goods. So that just drives up the price of every single thing that's imported in, you know. So that's about it. I spent 3 years on Guam, and I felt like an abject failure. I felt like a failure in life. I felt like I had gone nowhere. You know, I'm sure some of our listeners who feel anxious about sticking around their hometown. You know, I'm still around the place where I went to high school. If you feel anxious about sticking around there, I get that. You know. And also, you know, I think you can find success and happiness there. There's a lot of people I know on Guam who I'm not friends with anymore, but I know that they're very happy and they're leading very fruitful lives. And you know, there's parts of their lives that I'm jealous of too. You know, they have families and you know they have a good house and a good support system. So there's that. But for me, I wanted to break out. I wanted to leave the world and see the world. So for me, being back home, back in that trapped in that island, just made me feel like a real failure. So that's why me moving to Hawaii was such a big deal. That's why being here in DC, in the heart of America, is such a big deal for me. You know, every time I fly into DC and I see the National Monument and the White House, I'm like, yeah, I'm coming home. It's crazy, you know. But yeah, that's, you know, if young folks are out there feeling like they couldn't hit it big right away. I mean, I didn't hit it big until 10 years ago, 2015, when I worked at the Washington Post. And even then, nobody knew who the fuck I was anyways. But I still felt like I made it big, you know, career-wise. I've done more than I ever thought I would. But if you feel like that you didn't quite make it right after college and you're kind of stuck for a few years, I've been there. So don't give up.
Yeah.
It worked out for Gene. I mean, working at one of the most important papers in the country, arguably. But the LA Times thing is maddening, dude. I could relate. Like, I've had similar experiences where it doesn't even make sense. Like the compatibility's there. You know what I mean? Everything's there. It's like it's just not meant to. It just boils down to it's just not meant to be. You know, you have to always just almost dismiss it that way. It's like, why isn't this happening?
Yeah.
You know? It's
and
very
so I've and what the funny thing is that they wanted me after I started working at the Post, the LA Times. They started knocking on my door and they started asking me if I wanted to work there.
Then they started courting.
So I did apply there, and I actually went through the whole interview process all the way up to them offering me a salary. And I don't want to talk about what they offered me, but it was $30,000 less than what I make now. So I was like, all right, well, I'm priced out of the market. Like, I don't know how I could afford to live there in LA with that salary.
Yeah,
so I'm
that's
just
crazy.
like,
Great
I'm
point.
good. I guess I'll stick around here then.
Hmm.
You know, like I skipped the stepped, you know, to work at the Post, you know.
Nice.
I needed a little context too. I was a little ignorant of this. I just looked at the population of Guam. It's far below 200,000. 166, just over 166,000.
Yeah, that hasn't grown.
That's incredible.
When I left in 2003, it was 155,000. That's how few people are hanging out there, you know.
Wow. What are your friends and family that are still on Guam? What do they do for a living? What's the big thing out
Family, the family business. You know, it's such a small place that the guy who owns a car mechanic, that shop is still ongoing because that's the only car mechanic on Guam.
there? Wow.
The guy who owns a shoe store, that person is also their kids are also running the shoe store. You know, the guy, the car. I bring out car mechanic because that was a store where I used to buy Nintendo games because that was the only place that sold electronics.
Wow.
It was a fucking car shop. So this Indian dude Uttam was selling, you know, like car speakers and tires and Nintendo games. It's where I bought Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse. I remember distinctly going into that fucking place and hearing all this fucking music and be like, I want the new Castlevania. That's the shit. I played Castlevania Simon's Quest. I need part 3. You know?
Good selection.
So cool.
Yeah. So and that shop is still around and it's run by the kids. There's other kid who I always competed with on Guam, this Japanese kid, that's piece of shit, you know, always had really high grades, and our parents were always like comparing to each other. He's really smart, like he got all the high grades, but he went to University of Pennsylvania, and he went right back the fuck back to Guam. Like he was like, it's not for me out here. I just want to go back to Guam, and now he's just running his dad's accounting business. He's super
with an
rich.
Ivy League education.
Mega rich because he is like the biggest accountant on Guam.
What?
So like every company is just using their firm. So he just took over his dad's firm. That's it. You know?
Wow.
It's all really old school family business. You know.
That's interesting.
The guy who owns a Pirates bar, he's still alive actually, but his kids are going to own the Pirates bar afterwards too. So it's just a real small town. It's really small town America when you think about it. You know, we love guns and barbecue too.
Ain't that America?
I think we should do an episode with all of our rivals. I want to get this Japanese kid, Gene's Japanese guy in Guam, the accountant, right? We'll just do a rivalry episode.
Who's my rival?
I don't know. Do you have one?
RuneScape?
The guy who robbed you on RuneScape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Find his username, bastard.
But yeah, that's about it for me.
Love it. I love it. All right. You guys made me feel a little better about my Pirates Booty episode. We'll see how it goes for Robert Ehrlich and see if he gets the mayorship of this town. It's kind of a side story, but it's kind of the most interesting part, I think.
Yeah, I never heard. I usually hear about the oddities on Long Island. I haven't heard of that. I thought I'm going to have to look into this.
I feel so bad for him because the guy's obviously fit for a straitjacket. But who knows? Maybe they just relent. Maybe they just give it to him. You know what I mean? It's only 5,000 people. Just give it, you know. Maybe you get some free snack food out of it. Barter. Make it a trade.
Yeah.
He's like, everybody gets a lifetime supply of Pirates Booty. Just let me be the mayor.
It's like you live in Alaska and you get money from Exxon every year. Yeah.
Do they pay everybody in that state?
Yeah, there's like a dividend check.
Oh, I never knew this.
Yeah.
Man,
Wow.
I'd love to live in Alaska
I think it's
someday.
like a couple grand
Yeah?
per person a year.
That's dope.
I don't know. I think that's too isolated for me.
I think it would be perfect. Anchorage sounds cool. It's supposed to be a cool place.
Is it? Yeah. I don't know.
It's supposed to be
much about
weird
it.
because it's like
I only know that
it's-
from Fallout 3. I hate to admit, but
Oh, Operation Anchorage.
that's my Fallout brain rot talking. I can look into this in real life now.
Yeah.
It'd
Yeah,
be-
I've always
there's
been
hundreds
interested
of
in
thousands
Alaska
of
as
people
someone
there.
from the 50th state, you know. I want to go to the other weird state, you know.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you have that connection. The not it's the lower 48. What do you call those two?
We're the lower 48 now.
The continuous 48 or whatever.
The contiguous 48.
Contiguous 48.
The contiguous.
Contiguous. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
but
like a
then
word
there's
I would never
Canada,
use. I
right?
don't know that word.
Continental. We call it in Hawaii. We call it
Continental,
continental,
yeah.
which
Okay,
makes
that's-
sense.
Oh, yeah, that does.
Continental states.
We're back. Big, you're the host of the show, but yeah, we're back. And Matt, so some change in schedule because there's some hard outs. We've been going for a long time. So we're just going to skip Gene's topic today. And
my topic was going to be cartoons, but
don't do it, Gene.
That's a tough topic because to wrangle in a short time, because like between like you, Dagan, and your background, like I was really looking forward to like just dishing about G.I. Joe with Colin. But actually, this gives me some time to actually kind of like rewatch some old G.I. Joe shows because it's been such a long time.
Yeah, where are they now? They were on what's that free service? Tubi.
Okay.
Back in the day, I watched a lot of them there. It's
yeah. So
we were saying, Gene. It's like that's a topic that could be like the whole episode.
Whole
it's
show,
not, I don't want to rush that episode. It's better.
Like we could
topic.
talk about the fucking G.I. Joe movie, like all these characters that I barely remember, like Baroness. You know,
Infinite.
He-Man. I want to have a whole He-Man side topic. You know.
So no, we'll do that topic the proper justice in the near future.
I like this. I like this executive decision. Yeah, the cartoon topic has legs. You know what I'll try to do? I'll make a little note for myself. So when these four reconvene, if at all possible, then we'll do that topic.
Sure.
That'd be
be great.
Let's try to do that. All right.
Yeah, I'm sure that permutation will happen again, like in the coming months.
Leave it to Micah.
My friends. I'm not worried. And listen, we know you love us, but do you love us this much? It's going on 4 hours already. I mean,
yeah, it's enough. It's enough already.
Let's go around and say goodbye. Gene, I'm starting.
This could have been the first 6 hour episode, but you know,
we were going that way. It might have just been. Guys, talk to me about goodbyes. Parting is such sweet sorrow. Weekend plans, whatever you got. Gene, I'm starting with you, my dude.
Weekend plans. Well, on Sunday, I'm actually planning to watch the Minecraft movie starring Jack Black.
Hey,
I will be reviewing it in lieu of our film critic for the Washington Post.
Interesting.
This is very exciting. The whole reason why I got into journalism in the first place is because I wanted to be a music or movie critic. I never really wanted to be a game critic.
And you get your first movie review at Minecraft.
And it's on Minecraft, so it might be a pan. I don't know. The interesting thing is that I never really played that much Minecraft, so like I'm the boomer going into this movie and be like, oh, what's this about? You know?
I'm going to see it, but as someone who saw Borderlands last year, man, my expectations are very low.
For sure.
Yeah, dude, especially with my name is Steve, and it's just, have you seen the Minecraft action figures?
Yeah, it looks terrible.
It's just Jack Black. Yeah,
I'm kind of obsessed with how bad it looks, though. Like it looks like a really good movie that will be bad and fun. So I'm actually slightly excited for this one. So I'm going to see that on Sunday, and then on Monday, the Ninja Sex Party. My boys Dan and Brian are actually going to be in town in DC, so I'm actually going to hang out with them for a bit.
Nice.
Good times.
I feel like you can't do the Minecraft movie without Jack Black. Like it had to be Jack Black in order to make it a go, right? But let me ask you this, Gene: is the movie critic deferring to you because he's too good for Minecraft, or does the WAPO need the mighty Gene Park because it's a video game movie?
I think it's because it's a video game. So
okay,
yeah.
All right.
Also, that guy's probably like, thank fucking God.
The movie critic is actually on vacation too, so a lot of it's been doing on freelances. But yeah, I am absolutely certain that people are like, ooh, I'm glad Gene's taking the bullet on this one. So, but yeah, I do the video game like art stuff. Like, so our TV critic will be looking at Last of Us season 2, but I'll be writing on that as well. So
cool, nice. Oh, there'll be plenty of that talking about that coming up, my friends.
At least Last of Us is like the section takes it seriously. Love is like no, the regular TV critic can take The Last of Us. This is a proper TV show. So,
yeah, yeah, good.
Yeah.
I mean, were they treating it that way with the first season though?
Yeah, they were.
Okay. All right. Good. Yeah. All right. So
it's an HBO show, and like HBO was like, no, this is our prestige. This is our show for the season for this year. So it was really kind of pushed a lot. So yeah. So season 2 is being taken care of, and it's like even during the meeting, I was like trying to explain the story, and I was like, do you want to know what happens in the second season? And everybody's like, no, don't tell us. So people who don't know the game at all are really, really excited to see what happens in Last of Us Part 2.
I can't believe half a decade later we get to just relive that whole launch. Like watch a whole group of new people react to everything. Won't spoil, but I just cannot wait to see the reaction.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Poor Naughty Dog. You had to go through it once.
It's amazing how many people are invested though that are outside the game universe.
Yeah.
The show is not good.
It's a good pop culture drama story. It's great.
It is.
It was always going to have cross cultural relevance. Always.
Definitely makes sense. Definitely makes sense. Matty, Talk to me, my friend. What's going on this weekend? What's going on with the plans? All that kind of thing?
Like I said, today I'm going to get to some writing because it's really my last productive window before a kind of busy weekend. Birthday party for my friend. It's that year where it's like, we're all turning 30 this year. So, lots of big bashes throughout 2025.
30 is huge, man.
Yeah.
Definitely celebrate your 30.
Yeah. So it's my best friend. So we'll be out for that.
Oh shit, it's my girlfriend's birthday too. I should probably figure something out for that.
You might want to, yeah. You might want to get out of there.
Quick, Gene.
Yeah, you gotta.
Thanks for the reminder, Manny.
I got you, bro.
Looking at your beautiful face, I couldn't help but be reminded.
I got you, bro. I'm glad to help. And then Sunday, I'm trying to think.
I just get done making out with Matty, and Matty's like, "I got you, bro. Don't worry about it." Thanks, bro. So cringe.
Thanks, bro. Sunday, what was it? I think Laylee and I wanted to go out to. We want to go out to eat. That was the main thing. The new Korean hot pot thing going on here. So we want to give that a look. Yeah,
sounds good.
So I've been on a good, steady meal prep plan. I've been really enjoying it. So when I do go out to eat, it just feels a lot more special. I was just falling prey to it constantly. I was getting DoorDash like multiple times a week. I fucking love eating out, bro. So I just I'm on a fucking roll this episode, bro. I gotta stop.
You really are.
But it's gonna be a fun weekend. And so just good time with friends and family, little creative energy interspersed throughout. And I'm reviewing a game, so I guess any pockets of fresh air I get will be dedicated fully to that. So that's my weekend, man. Looking forward to it.
That sounds full. That's making me tired. Just listen to it.
It's so funny you say that because next week is going to be busy. So
next week is going to be really busy.
Yeah.
I'm getting tired thinking about next week.
Yeah, same. So
definitely going to take the weekend to take a break. So
nice.
Good thinking. Yeah, cancel your girlfriend's birthday, bro. She'll get it.
Yeah.
Babe, I'm fucking tired. Don't you get it? Bulletproof.
Possibly soon to be not your girlfriend. We'll see how that goes. You got to get on it.
Remember my advice about flowers? This is when I start buying flowers.
Yeah.
So 100%.
This is why you don't buy flowers on the first date, because just in case you forget it's her birthday.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's a good
Break it
strategy.
out
Guys
now.
playing chess.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep that one in your back pocket. I like it. Kyle, what about you, my friend? We're going into the weekend. Usually this is an out to dinner night for you, Friday night.
Yeah, we were going to go out to dinner tonight, but I don't think we're going to. I think we're just going to stay in because Micah's going to grill. It's really nice out.
It is beautiful.
So we're going to do that. And I'm going to go for a walk. And and then this weekend I'm just going to try to finish Adamfall, I think, this weekend.
Dude, it's 73 out right now, man.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's 76 here. It says it's windy
right now.
Dig, I was thinking about you though, and I forgot to tell you this, so I'll just tell it to you on the show. Did you see the Gradius Origins collection announced?
Somebody, a listener of some kind, showed it to me on Twitter. I had no idea that was even in the works.
Yeah, I was thinking about you. I mean, it's Life Force, Salamander 2, the 3 first Gradius games. So yeah, that's gonna be.
Never played Salamander 2. Yeah, that's amazing. It just did my heart good to see the Konami logo on there and stuff. I was like,
oh yeah, they're doing a great job with their old school collections. It's definitely not one I expected. And for people that don't know, why would you Life Force / Salamander is one of Dagan's very favorite games.
Love that game.
Dagan, did you know that the Kojima produced Zone of the Enders series is actually canon to the Gradius series?
No, somebody mentioned that to me, and I thought they were fucking around with me 2 years ago.
The literal Gradius ship is a mech in Zone of the Enders too.
That's so cool.
That's so interesting. I don't think I knew that.
It can turn into a robot. It's the actual Gradius ship. They're like, oh my god, Gradius! Like seriously,
that's super cool.
It's so sick. It even has the options like floating around, that shoots out different lasers. It's so sick, dude.
Dude, that's so cool.
I love that design.
Kojima's been so far out from Konami now that I always forget about the affiliation now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's
part of the universe still. So
actually, wait, real quick. I have something to get up. Colin, what does your shirt say? I've been trying to read it all fucking episode.
It's Dredge.
Thank you, Matty. What does it say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's like this is like a 15 or more year old shirt for the band Dredge. DREDG.
Dredge. Okay. I thought it said Dredge.
I've been trying to the whole show. It just drags my eye. I'm like, no, I'll try that again later. Like I just couldn't figure the fuck out.
Yeah, no, I guess it doesn't. I'm so used to seeing it.
Oreo or something too.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
Oreo,
it's one of my 5 shirts right now since it's.
I saw Drano for a moment.
Drano, yeah, that could be it.
Yeah,
there's not enough. It would be 5.
Drano's, we're missing a letter. I'm a little out of pocket here. Yeah.
But yeah, I can see how that. I mean, it is unreadable if you don't know what it says, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's at the top of the pile right now. It's been for a few months, so I've just been wearing it and washing it, and eventually it'll fall down the pile and something else will come up.
It's in good shape. The graphics still in good shape. It's such an old t-shirt.
Yeah, I'm so shocked. Like some shirts really hold up like so well, and then some shirts just like I bought that Mega Man 2 shirt like a few years ago of the Stage Select screen or whatever, and that thing's like destroyed. And I haven't worn it any more or less than any of these other shirts. So yeah, some of the screen printing is a lot better than
I like
others.
it.
But anyway, yeah, that's it for the weekend, Dave. Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
Nice. Yeah, it was fun. I just remember this when we were talking about t-shirts. I wore this. I don't know. Can you guys see Mickey under the Mickey shirt? Am I blowing your mind right now?
I take off my Mickey Mouse shirt to reveal another Mickey Mouse shirt.
Wow. It's all kinds of meta over here.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, I'm going to do the obnoxious parent bragging thing. We just found out that my son got accepted into the National Honor Society. So very happy for
hey.
That's the same son that's going to Fight Club.
I was
So
going to say,
Bryce
they're
going to beat it out of him.
Hey, I was actually the lowest scoring student on National Honor Society when I was in school. So
yeah.
That speaks to me more. I don't know where these kids
right?
came
Yeah,
from.
it's good to be the worst of the best as opposed to best of the worst.
I would have taken that. I wasn't even that smart. I don't know where my kids came from, but definitely I missed. If that was intelligence was passed down, I missed it in the gene pool for sure. But my kids got it, which is good. I'll take it. It's fine. Listen, guys, let's go out on this. I should have this memorized by now, but I don't. Patreon.com/laststandmedia for early ad-free access. As always, Colin, you want to talk about those RSS feeds anymore?
No, I'm over it.
We're good.
Fixed. Leave me alone.
Laststandmedia.store has the merch for Matty, Gene, and Kyle Chowderman. I'm Dagster Moriarty saying thank you so much out there for joining us today. You're appreciated. We love you. Now you could go listen to your second favorite podcast until next week. Weeks go so fast. We'll be here with you tomorrow. It'll feel like that. Don't worry. I know you're worried. Stop
Something
worrying.
not worth worrying about.
Only worry about what you can control. All right, peace.
Constellation is a product of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by and is directed and hosted by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is my brother, Dagan Moriarty. The show is produced by Last Stand's executive producer, Dustin Furman. All Last Stand theme music is by Ramon Narvaez, and all of our graphics and logos are by Dagan Moriarty. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's podcasts, including Constellation, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest support tier, and we're infinitely grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor.
Mm-hmm.